even starts in the sense of the roll call, I would like to ask Mr. Rodas, this is Monday, December 1st. Have you in fact started your employment with the West New York Parking Authority?
Yes, I have.
That being the case, Mr. Boris, I think, is going to advise you accordingly.
Yes, Mr. Rodas, under the municipal land use law, a member of the zoning board can't be an employee or officer of the municipality.
Rodas is resigning.
Would ask that you resign from the board.
I think a problem.
I would like to publicly thank you for your service. You've been one of those members that has attended regularly and with dedication, and we certainly thank you for it. And I suggest that you would send a letter to the mayor, since it's the mayor and the commissioners that appoint the board members, indicating your resignation and the reason for it.
Should I send that out to Maria, or should I send it out to the mayor? It's for myself.
You can call her and do it with her. You know how good she is.
All right.
Thank you, John.
Eventually, the letter should go to the mayor.
Yes, the letter goes to the mayor.
Okay.
If you want to send a copy to Maria, that's fine.
Okay. Oh.
Thank you, John. Have a great evening.
Take it easy. Take it easy, man. Yeah. Oh, well, it is what it is. Take it easy, man. What do you think?
What?
Yeah.
What's your job? If you can work it out, just tell me. You know. Okay, that being the case, why don't we, I guess let me first do the open public meetings notice. As the presiding officer of this special meeting of the Western New York Zoning Board of Adjustment, I do hereby publicly announce that the notice requirements provided for in the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied. I further direct that this announcement shall be placed in the minutes of this meeting. Notice of this meeting was properly given by the West New York Zoning Board of Adjustment by publication in the Jersey Journal on November 24th, 2014. Consequently, and posted on the municipal bulletin board and filed with the town clerk. Consequently, the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act have been satisfied, and I again direct that this be placed in the minutes of the meeting. Roll call, please.
Kenneth Blaine.
Here.
Ramon Moorhouse.
Here.
Jesus Alvarado.
Yeah.
Rosemary Porto. Here. Alberto Chapin.
Here.
Evelina Valdez.
We don't have any correspondence, minutes to approve, payment resolutions, escrow refunds, miscellaneous matters. So we will drop down to 11, which is applications, and the first application on the agenda is the application of Royal Printing and CANNNJ for property located at 434 50th Street and 432 51st Street. Is there anybody here in this application? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Feeling taller already. Nancy Capizzi, 11 Hillside Avenue in Tenafly, on behalf of Royal Printing Services. If I may just give a little brief opening before we get to the merits of the application. Royal Printing Services is a long-standing business within West New York. Their headquarters is located on 51st Street. And what we're seeking to do is we have purchased a building on the opposite side of our headquarters on 51st Street at 432 51st Street. We've also purchased a property to the rear along 50th Street at 434 50th Street.
Are these back-to-back lots?
The Royal Printing Service building shares a common rear yard property line with the 50th Street property. The other lot is separated by 51st Street.
Okay.
Both properties are improved with residential structures that are in disrepair. What we're proposing to do is to raise the existing residences and improve both lots for parking for the Royal Printing employees and some vans that they utilize for their day-to-day business. They're not going to be public parking lots. Public parking will not be permitted. We're not looking to generate any sorts of fee here. And it's essentially just to provide some off-street parking where none presently exists. There was some back and forth about the nature of the variances that we require in order to effectuate the raising of the residences and improving and creating the parking lots. After some conversation with board council as recently as this afternoon, the repurposing of the properties for parking lots is a permitted use. We do not require use variance in order to pave the parking lots and so on and so forth. However, because the parking lots are located on properties separate and apart from Royal Printing Services, we do need to come before this board for a waiver that the parking would be located on the same property as Royal Printing. We do also require some bulk variances, essentially parking stall size, parking aisle width, driveway width, and fence height. Those are all C variances that require a simple majority, and essentially that's the relief that's before the board this evening. We have one witness who supported the application, our engineer and planner, Anthony Kiris from Negley Engineering, and if there are no questions, I can begin with his testimony.
Don't you want me to certify him first?
Sure.
Please step forward.
Sir, if you could spell your name. What she's name.
So Anthony Kuris, spelled K-U-R-U-S. And I'm a licensed professional.
Can you raise your hand? Do you swear testimony about to give will be true, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
For the benefit of this board, would you please give us your educational background and your experience, and throw in how it relates to other zoning boards in Hudson County?
Sure. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, bachelor's of engineering from Villanova, master's of engineering from Stevens Institute. I've appeared, I was before this board probably a year or so ago. I've been before various boards and
It wasn't memorable.
it wasn't memorable. It was Jacqueline Heights maybe?
Oh, that would be
That
memorable.
was memorable.
Please continue.
Various boards throughout Bergen County, Essex, and Hudson County. Currently employed with Negley Engineering Associates, business address 34 Park Avenue, Lyndhurst.
Does any board member or planner or engineer or attorney have any questions as to the qualifications of this proposed planning expert?
Are you a professional planner?
Yes.
Not seeing any, I'll certify you as a planning expert for this matter.
I believe also an
Engineer too.
Oh, and engineer for this matter.
Yes.
Please continue.
Want us to share this one microphone?
Which one pulls out? There's one that pulls over there.
This one.
Oh, this one pulls out. Put her around.
Actually, it comes out like that.
And then this one you can do.
Thank you.
Is it easier if it goes around the side? Right.
Mr. Kiris, did you or your office prepare the plans that were submitted to the board?
Yes.
And have you had an opportunity to visit both properties and become familiar with the neighborhoods?
Yes,
Sir,
I have.
Sir, what you can't do is stand.
Better?
Yes?
Okay. Thank you. I know you have two sheets that are mounted. Can you just identify the plans that are mounted by the revision date?
Sure. The first one is sheet 2, which is the site demolition plan, which is from the submitted drawing set. The date of the plan is August 29th, 2014, with no revision date. And the second sheet is the circulation and turning exhibit, which is Exhibit 1, dated October 29th, 2014, with no revision date.
And both of these plans were submitted to the board?
Yes, they have.
Thank you. Being that we board submittals, if the board would like me to mark them as exhibits?
No need.
Thank you. So, starting with the first plan, if you can take us through the existing conditions, please.
Sure. The existing conditions for 434 50th Street, which is on the left of the page, it's known as Block 104, Lot 41. The lot is located on the north side of 50th Street. It's in the CR zone. It's a narrow rectangular shaped lot. It's 25 foot wide by 100 feet deep. It's 2,500 square feet. There's an existing two-story frame dwelling building on site, which is in a state of disrepair. This property is the property that shares the common rear lot line with the Royal Printing building. Taking us to the other property, 51st Street. That's 432 51st Street. It's known as Block 98, Lot 36. Again, we're also on the north side of the street. Same size lot. It's 25 foot wide by 100 feet deep, rectangular in shape, 2,500 square feet. The topography of the lot is gently sloping. There's no steep slopes on the property. This property also contains an existing two-story frame dwelling, which is in a state of disrepair. The orientation of the 51st Street property is in relation to the Royal Printing building. The Royal Printing property is located on the southerly side of 51st Street. That's basically it for the existing conditions. Two rectangularly shaped lots, narrower than they are deep, 2,500 square feet.
Thank you. If you can take us through what's proposed.
Sure. I'll put this sheet up here. We're proposing to demo the existing buildings on site. On the 50th Street, 432 50th Street, we're proposing to pave the lot with asphalt so that it can be utilized for parking of company delivery vans. The lot will be asphalt paved. We're proposing fencing.
Which lot is this?
This is 432 or 434 50th Street. I'm
This
sorry.
is the 50th Street lot?
50th Street lot
Okay.
is the one that shares the common.
This is for the delivery.
This is for the delivery vans, correct. Asphalt pavement. We're proposing new fencing along the front. Guide rail would be proposed along the existing building. Access to the lot would be from 50th Street through a proposed curb cut. Similarly, for 51st Street, 432 51st Street, we're proposing to demolish the existing structure on site. We're proposing to pave the lot with asphalt so that it could be utilized as parking for employees and customers. We're proposing an angled parking configuration. Because the lot is so narrow, it's only 25 feet wide. We can't fit a two-way, 24-foot wide driveway on site. So we're proposing an angled parking scheme where we have a 10-foot drive aisle and then angled parking spaces that are minimum measurement of 13.7 feet on the short side by 7.5 feet wide. And there's, we have additional room within the drive aisle to basically fit the cars.
Before we talk about the functionality of each approved lot, as far as drainage and lighting, could you take us through those particulars on each lot?
Sure. For drainage, on each property, we're proposing a small underground detention system. It's basically just a small underground pipe with an outlet control structure, so the runoff from the paved parking area will funnel towards a drain located generally in the center of the lot, and the runoff will be discharged at a controlled, reduced rate to the existing conveyance system out into the street. Same type of system as on each property. They've been designed to meet the town ordinance requirements, and I believe we've satisfied the drainage concerns.
Thank you. And
As far as lighting, we're proposing pole-mounted lighting, LED pole-mounted lighting. mounting height of 12 feet, short poles, 10-foot poles on 2-foot pedestals. They're gonna have backlight control and shielding to prevent spill light onto adjacent properties and also to reduce on glare.
The lighting is same for both properties?
Yes, identical.
Thank you. With regard to the 50th Street property, I know we're showing stacked van parking. Can you tell us how that's going to function on, from a ingress and egress standpoint?
Ingress and egress is from 50th Street. We're proposing a new curb cut, new driveway apron. Basically, the vans would be parked there. They would leave in the morning, and then come back to the parking lot the same way they got out.
So we're not envisioning much turnover, if any?
No.
Thank you, madam. There was a variance issue with regard to the fencing and two other issues, I believe, for the 50th Street lot.
Yes. This is the site plan sheet, which is sheet 3.0. Let me move this one for a second. So, for 50th Street, we're requesting a variance for parking space size. We're not striping any parking spaces on the 50th Street lot because we're using it only for the van parking. We're also asking for a variance for parking aisle width. 24 feet is required. We have 12 feet at the opening at the driveway. Again, we're stacking the vans up, and the overall width of our lot is only 25 feet, so we're requesting a variance for the parking aisle width, but again, we're basically pulling in and pulling out with that one. And also requesting a variance for the parking setback from a dwelling. Driveway width, parking stall dimensions, maximum fence height as well. We're proposing a 7-foot high decorative black bar fence along the front and then 7-foot high chain link privacy fencing along the.
I'm sorry, chain link what?
Chain link privacy fencing along the side where there isn't a building, between the building and the rear property line. 6 foot is the maximum height required. We're proposing 7 feet.
And with regard to the curb cut issue again, and the variances relative to 50th Street, can you tell us what impact the fact that these are going to be private parking lots has upon not complying with this criteria?
Functionality wise, based on the turning templates that we generated, we've provided sufficient space to get into and out of the lot. The variance for the deficiency in the parking lot or the parking aisle width, we feel we've compensated.
You're talking about the 50th Street, that's only for vans, correct?
Correct.
And what is the width of that parking lot?
The width of the parking lot actually is 24 feet, but we're using it to stack the vans, to come in, stack, and pull out. So we don't have a separate allocated 24-foot parking aisle width. So
I understand that, but my confusion is why isn't the entrance, the curb cut, why isn't that 24 feet as opposed to 12? So the vans can just pull right, so you would have 4 vans just pulling right in as opposed to having to, shimmy and swerve as the dance, the dance standard is.
we can accommodate that.
Well, thank you.
I think it just may require another variance, so the design point was probably to limit that. I think you're only what's the
So
maximum?
as long as we don't touch use, I guess we're okay.
That's right.
Curb cut opening, I think we can go wider. we can
Yeah,
go with.
that's a start.
So we can do an entire drop curve there?
It's just a matter of, I guess, getting the gate,
Okay, is that it for you on 50th Street?
excuse me?
Is that it for you on the 50th Street lot?
Yes.
Okay.
Turning to 51st Street, can you outline the variance issues there, please?
51st Street, we have a variance for parking space size, 9.5 by 20 feet is required. We have the angled configuration with the 13.7 feet on the short side. The spot is actually longer on the adjacent side. Also, we have a variance for the parking aisle width, 24 feet is the required aisle width. We're proposing a 10-foot, basically a 10-foot one-way driveway to get in, pull into the space and back out. Next is a variance for fence height, 6-foot maximum, or 4 feet in the front yard, maximum required, 6 feet elsewhere required. We're proposing 7-foot fencing for security along the front, and also 7-foot fencing between the building and the rear lot line as well.
So access is going to be provided by way of a rolling gate, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was the next question?
There'll be a gate along the front to permit cars to get in and out, and also to provide security.
And how wide is the opening?
We're showing a 10-foot wide opening.
Only for the lane?
Yeah,
Only for the lane, because there's no sense in having the opening, I suppose, to the right, I would say, because that's where the angled parking is.
correct.
Thank you.
The exhibit below, can you take us through that and show us the functionality of the 51st Street lot, please?
Sure.
First Street, access from the proposed curb cut to the driveway, and then cars pull into the angled spaces, and they would back out and return out the way they came in.
And would these spots function in a somewhat similar fashion as the vans, in the sense the first one to arrive parks all the way to the rear and is most likely the last one to leave?
Yeah,
That's correct?
yes,
Thank you. Does that summarize the site plan considerations?
yes.
Thank you. Turning quickly just to the variances at issue, the board is aware of them. You've outlined several times now for both lots. Some of the existing lot conditions, how does that generate into the need for the variances? I know you talked about the requirement of a 24-foot wide drive aisle. The lot's only 25 feet wide. If we were to strictly apply the zoning requirements to this lot, would we be able to create the proposed parking areas?
No, we'd have no room left for parking.
As far as an additional means of justifying the positive criteria under a C2 basis, that being promoting public welfare, we are creating off-site parking, correct?
Yes,
And presently the site is limited or has no, Royal Printing has no off-street or limited off-street parking, and this would be an increase to that.
they have a need for additional, definitely.
As far as the negative criteria, the fact that these are going to be private uses and people will not be coming and going from the public, how does that affect your analysis on whether there'd be a negative impact upon the neighborhood?
It's our opinion that there won't be a negative impact. This isn't gonna be a high turnover lot. It's gonna be, people come to work in the morning, they park, and then they leave at the end of the day. It's not a high turnover parking lot, so, it's our opinion there's no negative impact.
And at the time in the weekends, with the exception of storing some vans, would there be any activity on the 51st Street lot?
No,
So essentially, no, when people are home on the weekends, no activity.
no,
And in the evening hours, again, activity is limited or at a 0 rate.
that's correct.
Thank you.
Royal Printing is on 50th Street, right?
51st Street,
It's on 50th, right?
yes.
Okay. So the parking's gonna be across from it?
There's two lots.
There's two lots.
One lot is on 50th Street to the back of 51st
Oh,
Royal Printing.
Right.
The other lot is across the street on 51st.
Okay.
The
Now,
51st
I'm a little confused about
I
that.
understand. The 51st Street lot is for employees.
It's right across from.
The 50th Street lot is for the delivery guys.
Okay.
Not big.
Can I ask a question? What's the significance of why is, a fence of 6 feet the height, I guess, that's permitted, and what's the significance of 6 feet? Because you're asking for 7, which seems to me to make no difference, but what's the significance of 6 versus 7?
Let me have, for security purposes, the higher the fence, the better
So
security.
why doesn't the plan, the zoning say, let's have a 10-foot fence, but let's, why, I mean, if you had an answer to that, why not?
Well, we, having considered the fact that especially on the 50th Street lot, we will have vans there that'll essentially be idle for 2 days. For Saturdays and Sundays, is limited to no activity at all on the 50th Street lot. So as an additional deterrent to have an additional foot, sometimes size matters, and when you look up at the scale of the wall, at the scale of the fence, we thought that additional foot would be a greater deterrent from people trying to peek overhead and
Is it otherwise aesthetic? Is that what it is, the 6 foot?
I'm sure there's some aesthetic impact. And on the 51st Street lot, essentially a similar concern, but we have provided a chain link fence, so it's not a solid board-on-board fence style. It is an opening fence to lessen to a degree the feeling of cutting off any light or open space.
And so you had agreed on the 50th Street that you would make that frontage the full 24 feet, correct?
The curb cut,
The curb cut,
Yes.
24, okay.
yes.
Yeah, so Vance could just pull.
Right. I think our planner on the report had mentioned the lighting.
No, the planner was gonna do that, but I will back up Ms. Berto's question, and would you please give testimony to make sure that the lighting will not affect the neighborhood or the neighbors after sunset?
Well, we were proposing to have our lighting on from dusk till dawn. And Mr. Kiris, if you can speak again, I know you have a lighting sheet, if you can turn to that, please, and explain to us the lighting diagram. We wanted you testifying if you can speak to the November 20th, 2014 report.
This is also for matter security.
Yes.
So for lighting, we're proposing 2 pole-mounted LED area lights, 12-foot mounting height. They're 10-foot poles on 2-foot pedestals. They're LED lights, so they produce less glare. They can be, they have backlight control, meaning you can turn off some of the LED fixture or bulbs per se to the back of the light, so that the light is directed at the pavement and at the ground, and that you don't have as much spill light going to the back of the light fixture. Each lot, we have 2 light poles proposed.
According to the lighting diagram, what's the rate at the property line?
We're less than 1 foot candle or less, which meets the ordinance requirement.
And I understand the review letter asked us to take that diagram out a little further beyond the property line.
Yes, which we would agree.
Okay, so I think what you're saying is that the lighting outside of either lot not only meets the requirement of the ordinance, but also as per our planner's request, it will be less than that.
Yes,
Is that correct?
sure, we can reduce the intensity.
Right now, it's at .25. As we carry the exhibit, we carry the area further out onto adjacent properties, I would imagine it would drop. Is that correct, Mr. Pierce?
Yes,
So we'll provide the board with an exhibit to reflect that.
Well, what I would like you to do is satisfy whatever the requirement is of our planner in his comment.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just indicate, when I was looking at the lighting plan, I noticed that you were proposing the very same luminaires for each of the parcels.
Correct.
And the more I looked at it, the more it seemed to me that the values were different from one depiction to the depiction on the other parcel. And that was something that caused me a little bit of concern. It just seemed to me that if you have the same type of fixture, that as you are in the same area relative to the each of the fixtures, you would have the same values, and they are not quite the same. So I would ask you to take a look at that.
sure.
The major thing I think that we want to anticipate and protect against is having the lighting overflow onto the neighbor's property so that people are kept awake at night.
Absolutely.
That's the only issue.
Sure.
I mean, but that has to be balanced with security for both the vans as well as, well, not necessarily the employee parking, but certainly for the van.
Yeah, we could definitely,
So I would just ask you to work with our planner to make sure that that happens.
Correct, we'll have to do that.
Okay.
with respect to the differences though, the spacing is actually different. So these two lights are closer together, these two are farther apart, so that's why the photometric foot candle printout is slightly different. They're not the exact same spacing, so,
Okay.
but we'll send you an updated plan.
Ms. Pritchard, do you have any other questions?
Yeah. Because I got to take a look at the property, which is that little wooden house, right, which is the one where the employee parking is going to be. And then there's two restaurants next to it, so there's two commercial enterprises. I didn't see what was on the other side. Is that houses that are surrounding?
There is a commercial property to our left and a residential property to our right.
Okay, so again, to that point about the lighting. And then with again, I only got to see really visually the blue wooden house. It's narrow, so when they're backing up, what's the traffic, the pedestrian traffic that could be affected when the employees are, and again, it's not a high volume, which is good, right? It's not people coming
Right.
in and out. But what's the safety measures to, because they're gonna have to back out.
Correct.
How do you secure that somebody can see, little kids running by or a bicycle or something?
Well-
Coming out of the restaurant?
Well, when you, as far as the design of both properties, is there anything from a topography standpoint or a building standpoint that would impact available site triangles?
No,
Can you be a little bit more detailed oriented on that?
the fence along the front is gonna be, it's not gonna be opaque, you'll be able to see through it, and then also, once you pull out into the side, or once you get close to the sidewalk area, you can see, you can look both ways before you cross the actual sidewalk.
You had mentioned earlier the lots are both pretty level, correct?
Yes, there's no steep grade change or topographic constraints. Be similar to backing out of like a residential type driveway.
Any other questions?
There's a tree on Fairview Street, right?
Yes.
That's the one that has a wire driveway pull in. Is there any way you'd be able to place it somewhere? Like replace it on that street?
How close is the tree to the,
Like on the right side of the.
The tree is at the,
do we have any ideas the distance between the tree and the property line?
I think the tree's in the right of way.
the tree's in the right of way. It's
What I'm
probably-
saying, how close is it to
Probably
the right
2
side?
feet.
Because I think the suggestion is only to do the curb cut up to the tree.
That's how we drew it. we drew the curb cut at we drew an 18-foot curb cut and then a transition curb so that we would preserve the tree.
So it's the width of the lot is 25 feet,
The width of the lot is 25 feet.
and the curb cut's 18?
We proposed an 18-foot curb cut.
But what you said today, I thought was less.
It was 12 feet at the gate opening. So it's an 18-foot curb cut tapering
This
to
is for
12
the,
feet.
this is for the,
This is for the van,
the van?
So if we
What?
if we want to keep the tree, we can't.
Well, I don't understand, because it doesn't make any sense to have an 18-foot curb cut if the gate opening's only 12.
It helps you swing. It helps you swing the truck in. If you look at the turning exhibit, there is benefit to it.
How about if we have an 18-foot gate opening? You know, my purpose was to have vans pull straight in.
Sure.
No, because we want to preserve the tree.
No, I'm just saying, if you could.
No, we are. We're doing it right now.
Just
Preserve the tree and make
slide
it
it over.
18 foot instead of 12, right? So the other 6 is for the tree. So it's 18 foot, and then make the gate opening 18 foot.
Sure.
So it's less of a swing to the right, and the others just pull right in. Is that correct? Does that make sense?
Yeah, we can widen the gate.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarity, the condition of approval, the applicant would agree to curb cut and gate opening of 18 feet?
Correct. And preserve the tree.
The tree itself is not that great a tree.
But it's gonna be tree.
It's not that great a tree.
Maybe we're gonna do it.
I guess, if there's a place to put it, I'd be happy to do it.
Replace the old one with the new one?
What's,
It's in the back.
He said it's, in bad shape.
what type of tree there? Do you have a caliber on?
It's 12-inch.
It's what?
12-inch caliber tree.
I don't know what that means.
The diameter of the tree.
Relatively.
The last thing that I have is, I guess, no parking area or no parking signs delineated on the roadway pavement in front of both lots. I want to keep the tree. Okay. The tree? No, remove the tree, you're gonna uproot the roots and everything. How would you like to remove?
Sure.
Excuse me, sir?
I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr.
I just
Chairman.
wanted to.
Sorry.
There was a comment on, there's our planners report, is going, what maximum interval from off-site parking? Can you explain what that is? Did you make that comment?
That was my comment, and I can tell you that they conform to that stipulation, and the idea is that you just, the code doesn't want the parking to be, in this instance, more than 250 feet from the use that's being served. And they comply with that.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Chairman, I had just two questions, I think. One question was, I know that the parcel, as we're looking at the exhibit here, the one to the right, which I believe is 51st Street, but that's the across the street parcel, if you will.
Correct.
So that's an off-site parking area. And the other one, the one to the left there that shares that rear property line, are those two parcels, the primary parcel for the company and the one that's immediately to the rear, are those going to be consolidated?
No, they remain under separate ownership.
All right, so it would seem to me that technically speaking, the same circumstance that applies to the parcel across the street is applicable here. Even though it's so close, it's technically an off-site parking circumstance.
Two separate lots, so the same It's section 414-25H of town code.
So it's the same situation for both?
Same situation for both.
So that's why they're in front of us, for both?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, one other, I'm under the impression, and maybe mistaken myself, but does the firm have another parking facility that's similarly designed here in West New York?
We do, yes, we have an existing lot also on 51st Street,
Okay.
which is really just a few down from 432.
Okay. And the reason, one of the engineers that reviewed the plan, the engineer that authored the letter along with myself, could not make it tonight. And it was mentioned to me that there was another facility. Are the dimensions and the backing out and all those things that are somewhat atypical?
It essentially mirrors this lot on 51st Street as far as the.
Are there any issues that relate with traffic conflict because you're doing something atypical and that vehicles are backing into traffic or into the roadway?
We've had that lot for a number of years and thankfully haven't had any issues. As far as trying to preserve the tree, there was a recommendation to replace the sidewalk, which we're happy to do. But to
No. We've gone from a 12-foot curb cut, right, to an 18-foot curb cut, which keeps the tree.
the engineer had also recommended the replacement of the sidewalks. So I'm not sure, is that tree in the sidewalk area?
Yes, there's a tree.
All right, so you can replace the sidewalks around the tree. Right?
In the overall grand scheme of things, as we excavate,
In the overall grand scheme of this board, that tree is very important.
I can appreciate that. I
No,
just,
you can't.
I,
Trust me, I can, you can't. Okay? We've gone from a 12-foot curb cut to an 18-foot curb cut with an 18-foot gate, which makes it easier for the vans on the right to get in, even though they can't go straight. So we've done something there.
fair enough.
Okay? And we've also done the signs on the street in front, no parking or whatever it is.
Correct.
Does our attorney have any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Would any member of the public like to come forward and raise any questions regarding this application by Royal Printing for 434 50th Street and 432 51st Street? Not seeing, I'll close that portion of the hearing. I'll move this application for approval as amended and ask for a second. Is there a second? Roll call, please.
Kenneth Blaine.
Yes?
Rose Puerto. Yes. Ramon Moyho.
Yes.
Casey Alvarado.
Yes.
Alberto Chavez.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good to see you.
I don't know how long.
You're talking to me. I don't know for how, I don't know how long for long either. No, I didn't do my saying. I had it, it was right there. Sir? You know, I have a saying that I've used so many times, and I should have used it, but I forgot. Have you ever done any work at the old Hudson County Courthouse?
Occasionally,
Do you know, there's a saying over it, do you know what it says?
I don't recall.
I'll tell you, it says when you stand well, stand still.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Council, have a nice day.
Happy holidays.
Same to you. All right. The next matter on the agenda is the matter of Gilberto Camacho, 604 56th Street. Anybody here on that application? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, I'm Alonzo Legrand on behalf of the applicant.
Good evening.
I just want to bring one thing to your attention. since we filed the application, there's been a minor revision that I've learned of recently, which, and I'll defer to the board, if the board wants to revise plans. The client wants to flip the commercial unit to the basement and put a residential unit on the first floor.
Exactly the same dimensions.
Yeah, whatever's there is there, everything is existing.
It's up to the board if you'd like to see plans.
All we'll do is we'll start, we'll have to just,
I'd like the board to express itself. We now have plans that have on the second floor an office, and on the basement, I'm sorry, on the first floor an office, and on the basement an apartment. They want to change that, I guess, to make the basement the office, and the first floor the apartment with the same dimensions. Right.
Exactly the same as
Yes.
the different floor.
Correct. So the question is whether we want to force them to go home and come back with new plans, or willing to exercise our judgment tonight, one way or the other, with whatever their evidence is, understanding that the office will now be on the basement floor and the apartment will be on the first floor. How do we do it?
Mr. Ross, can I just ask you, what is this thing? Because maybe, I don't know what this, is that the board? So it'll be, you'll have to necessarily be a little bit,
right, Mr. Valea can testify as to, and give a little bit of history. When my client purchased the house, it was a two-family house in the industrial lifestyle. There was a basement that was finished the way it's finished now, with basically two rooms and a bathroom. It was never used as an apartment, it was never used as an office, it was just a finished space. My client owns a local Spanish newspaper, and he wanted to bring his business into the house. So what we did is we came before the board, we got a variance to eliminate all the residential uses, convert the entire building into the newspaper offices, which was approved. Unfortunately, the market started to downturn, the newspaper wasn't doing as well. So he only used the first floor as the newspaper business, and the second floor as an apartment. So he left the apartment space alone. The first floor he didn't really touch, he just used the rooms that were there for his office. Since then, the nature of the newspaper business is actually getting small. You don't need that many people working. He actually has 3 employees himself. He has a person who works in the office, designing the layouts. And he has one person who's a salesman who's outside the office all the time. He doesn't need the entire first floor. So rather than putting a tenant in the basement, he wants to use the first floor, which is laid out as an apartment, as the apartment, and basically just use the basement.
Let me just ask you a question. You said the original approval was for the whole building to be used as an office.
Correct.
What is the legitimacy of the second floor apartment?
What happened was, that was approved.
It's a long story.
No, as things started to change, he never actually went to the building department with the resolution to get a CO to convert it. So it was never legally converted. Legally, as of today, since the CO was going to change,
But as far as-
it's a two-family house.
Prior approval was granted,
Correct.
allowing me from a two-family house to commercial.
For the whole building.
That was never, the CO was never obtained, so it is still a
Legally, a two-family.
two-family house. And now he's before the board, asking for commercial.
The first floor to be an apartment, and the basement to be a office.
Correct.
Okay, so we're okay. We're okay. Does the board want to entertain that tonight? Yeah, okay, we'll entertain it.
That's basically, I just want to give you
Okay.
that history.
All right, let's get going.
Copy.
You said it.
I do. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Orestes Vallejo, V-A-L-E-L-L-A.
not as his qualifications be accepted.
Does any board member have any questions as to the qualifications of this proposed? Not seeing any, so certified, you please.
Mr. Valera, you were the architect from the original application, I believe. And basically, there's a two-family house there that was converted to the commercial use, which is never secured for commercial use.
Thank you.
And the two apartments still remain, the first floor is actually used as the office, correct? And then it was going to the basement. We basically want to go back and have a two-family house and the offices in the basement, correct?
Yes, it's an existing two-family, it's between Jefferson and Jackson on 46. It's block 123, and it's lot 29. It's a typical two-family home, very nice, very generic on a 25 by 100. There is an apartment on the second floor, that is an existing apartment, it's an existing three-bedroom apartment. Living room, kitchen, bathroom. It's 778 square feet. That's an existing dwelling unit. And we are not proposing anything to be done to it. The drawings as are existing show us proposing an office on the ground floor. However, the plans have changed. We'd like to maintain it as an apartment, as it was originally when the house was done. It's a two-bedroom apartment with a dining room and a living room. And then what's happening is the basement, which is the one that, now all the conditions on the basement are existing. We're not proposing any.
Show me to the two-bedroom apartment, that's on the second floor?
There's a three-bedroom existing on the second floor, and that's on the little drawing, item 4, existing second floor plan.
Where's the two-bedroom apartment?
The two-bedroom is the ground floor.
That's existing or proposed?
That's the existing apartment.
As opposed. Will the, if the board approves this, will the apartments on the first floor be one or two bedrooms?
Two bedrooms.
What I'm looking at is one bedroom.
No, you're looking at the basement.
So all we're doing is switching up and down.
Well, identical in that there is no proposed construction. Whatever is there is what's there. And that's why I wanted to.
It's a two-bedroom apartment, I've got plans for a one-bedroom apartment.
Yeah, it could never be a literally duplicate
Oh, I
of
see.
existing condition.
That's what we,
Saying this is the kitchen, this is the bedroom, this is the
Right.
bedroom, this is the
let's get plans, let's do it right. All right, because what I'm looking at, that's what I was confused about. That's why I asked you the question.
Yes, no, I
Was a two-bedroom apartment on the second floor, and that's a three-bedroom apartment. Okay, why don't we do that? Oh, today, right? Okay, what, what we need conditions. Mr. Return.
What is the earliest?
The 11th. Today's the first.
I would have to bring it to tomorrow.
Either that or we can do it January 22nd, which is our regular meeting.
You do the drawings. I could agree to it.
You say you're doing January, okay, we'll postpone this to January 22nd. This will be number 1 on our calendar, January 22nd. Now that, Maria? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you,
I like it, sure.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Is any member of the public here on this application? Gilberto Camacho, 604 56th Street in West New York. I don't see any, but in case anybody is here, this has been postponed to the board's regular meeting on January 22nd, 6:30 here. It'll be the first one on the agenda, so please be present and on time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
no further notices.
And no further public notices are required, as our attorney always tells us. We have asked people to come for the only other matter, Meridian Boulevard, at 8. It is now 17 of 8, so we're doing okay. Yep, so we can take a break. Thank you. No, very, very important. Ms. Percho, thank you for coming tonight. I'd like to publicly thank you. So we got these things done. Thank you. Thank you. All right, doing great.
I emailed you on that. Yeah, let's look at, let me pull up your email. Oh, great.
So let them
Essentially,
do it, right?
if you answer my question one way, then you may have to come back and the other way.
I just don't know what you want me to do. No, it wasn't that. I didn't buy it.
Then it's
I want a good view.
but I'm moving everything around. So then on the 13th, we can do a lot of those stuff and get that out of the way. I'm not gonna let you do that. I was trying to get this done before. The 11th. December the 11th. Yep, trying to get this done.
You okay?
Bronchitis. I have a bout of it about the same time every year.
That's not what they want to hear. See the writing on the wall. Well, get them back.
No shave November.
No shave what?
No shave November.
Well, it's December.
I know, a little hard to do it this morning. So I raised $1,300 for cancer research. And our team at the office, Peach Folks, raised $390.
Oh, we should call her. Check.
Still time. I can send you an email.
Do you have my email? No, is there any particular form of cancer?
Well, it's for cancer research because it's a men's thing. It's normally prostate cancer, but I don't know 100% that it is, that's where it goes to the American Cancer Society. So I guess they decide where the need is.
I say go to the cancer society. I say go to the Citizens of breast cancer.
Right.
That's for the ones where my family died. Tell my
Okay, I'm ready.
JET, SAM,
6600. And I normally carry it, but
You
my
better
little,
put free cancer research.
Oh, I know, I'm probably gonna do it while I'm here.
Oh, okay. I have a dumb phone, so I can't do that. And the next day I come across it. If I'd given you my Yahoo, you would tell me this was #. But I haven't checked all
I have the same problem with my personal account. I do so much for my work account that every once in a while I go, hey, it's like 250 emails in there. Let me go look. Most of it's junk, but occasionally there's somebody asking a question.
Yeah. Oh, today, one day over the Thanksgiving holiday. And I was playing on the wall in my junk mail. Now that's either my Lisa's father, or my Uncle Joe's life, or my Uncle Jack's stuff. But when I opened it, after the main phone, it had my studio audition. And of course, it's a link to something on Oprah, and I'm sure it's a virus. Because I put it in the junk file. So after I got the second one, I just sent an email to my aunt and cousin and said, look, I think somebody's hacked one of your email addresses. I don't know what it is. One of the email addresses looks to be my aunt's nephew's email, but my cousin lives out in Boise, Idaho, and 3 of the addresses are Boise.
Yeah, when I left the house of cards, they unfortunately,
So I said, here's the whole list of names. So you can identify whether it's your email address that's been hacked or the other one.
I've had, this is people's names that have come up correctly, and then when you look at the email address that's underneath it,
Yeah.
how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Yourself?
Good to see you in this beautiful place. Yeah, I do too. A lot. It should make it radically different. You didn't understand radically.
Oh, wow. Oh, how
We did understand radically.
Also, you'll be like Sanders Slay, going, how beautiful. We're going to San Francisco on the 25th.
Umberto, are you relocating?
Only 5 days.
Because we just wanted to say.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, tonight. So I'm just gonna put my bag where you're sitting. Somebody's okay.
And I saw you driving down the hill today. You were out, you have a trailer, right?
Oh, yes, it is.
I saw you going down the Galaxy.
I was with my buddy.
I know that. And then you passed me, I was waiting for the line.
I assume your fee was paid by.
Oh, you were going down. I put my car up here. Even though it's automatic. You wanted the full question. I know. Oh, it's on, you don't have to look at me. I don't have to give it back.
Later in the day.
I agree. I agree.
I just asked why they were paved by in front of the Riviera. So it's not extensive, but practically, they didn't even, well, he said some people do have problems. My problem is I
I got some.
The bridge
Well, I have two
right here, Carl. Carlo, we want you to sit here so you can get up and talk to them.
We know that we're not.
Since you mentioned my name, they can't.
Probably not.
So we're never getting to our conversation.
I just want to talk about something about either January 11th.
No, I'm not. And those red shirts. Those red shirts, that was just really let's get them with this lawyer. These guys, they're effective and possibly considered.
He wasn't right. Even if I
I gotta talk about
Very
All right, everybody, why don't we get started? I believe we're up to Mr. Kantrowitz. Asking questions of the applicant's planner. Mr. McDonough. For the record, I'll note that we have 4 members, but 4 members are in fact a quorum of our 7-member board. So what will have to happen is that the transcripts will have to be obtained and they'll have to be given to the other board members for the next meeting, assuming that we have a full complement of a board by that time. We have 2 microphones.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jeffrey Kantrowitz. I'm from the law office of Aid Rappaport. I represent the Versailles Apartment Corporation. Good evening, Mr. McDonough. And I'll try my best to keep my voice up.
Why don't we do it this way? Mr. McDonough, why don't you step down there? I was going to exchange microphones.
I'm sorry?
I was going to exchange microphones. That way you won't have your back to a board member. Okay, why don't you take that microphone over to you? Right there. You just passed it? It's behind you?
I just want to grab these.
Oh, okay. Yep. And Mr. Kantrowitz, if you use that one, we're all set. Great. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good evening, Mr. McDonough, how are you?
Good evening,
I
Mr.
see you brought what looks like a really heavy book, blue hardcover book under your papers. Could you tell me what that is?
This is just a planning reference manual called Planning and Urban Design Standards by the American Planning Association.
What's the published date on that?
I believe it's 2006.
2006. Was it referenced as a reference document in your report that you rendered to this board?
I don't believe so.
Well, you want to take a look at your report and tell me without guessing?
I do not see it in the submitted report.
Okay, can you tell me why you brought it tonight?
Last time there were questions about typical textbook standards for parking, and I brought it for references to massing, just in anticipation if the question comes up.
For parking or for massing?
For massing,
Have nothing to do with parking.
correct.
Excuse me a second, Mr. Chairman. Apologize. I'm sorry. I'm deeply sorry. So if you do refer to it, you're gonna refer to it solely and only for purposes of massing, is that it?
Honestly, Mr. Kent, it was a guessing game. I know you asked questions last time about a textbook that we happened to have, and it was just in anticipation of standard planning literature. I thought it would be safe to have it.
Is the word massing mentioned anywhere in your report that you rendered to the board?
Could you both use your mics?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Is the word massing mentioned anywhere in your report that you rendered to the board?
I don't believe so, no.
Is the word massing mentioned anywhere in your strike that? Are you aware whether your client has obtained transcripts of your testimony in this matter before this evening, as you've gone along?
I believe we are caught up to my testimony in terms of transcripts, yes. I know there are a couple that are missing.
Did you look at any of those transcripts of your testimony in this matter before coming here tonight?
No, but I brought my notes.
Brought your notes, okay. Do you know whether you mentioned the word massing in any of your direct testimony with regard to this matter?
I believe I did. I believe I referred to my exhibits and looked at the form of the area and talked a bit about this as appropriate transition in form and massing, going from the taller structure with a sharper edge to a smoother edge with a medium-sized building in between.
Okay, okay. Now, Mr. McDonough, you're familiar with the municipal land use law, yes?
And JSA 40:55D, yes.
Dash one, it's set all the way on through about.
All the way up.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Let me repeat that. You're familiar with the municipal land use law, title 40:55D-1, all the way up to in the hundreds or low hundreds.
It keeps going, yes.
Okay. And you're also familiar with the West New York zoning code. Are you familiar with the West New York zoning code?
Yes, I am.
Did you refer to the West New York zoning code when you worked on this project?
Did I, you mean in my testimony or in my report?
Let's start with your report. Did you refer to the West New York zoning code in your report?
I believe I did, yes.
Okay. And did you refer to the West New York zoning code when you testified?
I believe I did, yes.
So it's a fair conclusion that you're familiar with the West New York zoning code as it pertains to this property.
That is a very fair conclusion,
Okay.
yes.
Now, let's examine a few, I'd like to show you, and I'll provide to your council the copies of a few sections of the West New York zoning code, and just ask you a series of short questions.
Thank you.
about that. Mr. McDonough, just for the record, I'm showing you what's been marked as attachment 1 to 414 entitled zoning. You recognize what that is?
I do. It is the bulk area yard zoning table as provided in the ordinance.
Okay, and it has a series of notes. You've seen this before, correct?
I have, yes.
And you're familiar with this table, so if I ask you a series of questions, we can work our way quickly through that.
Yep.
And this table has a series of notes that accompany it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, hang on one second. Just so we can be clear, correct that what you're looking at, I downloaded off the West New York website. You see the section in the middle of the first page, it's titled section 415-15, notes to schedule?
Yes.
Fair that section and the following notes, starting with capital A and continuing, are notes to the schedule of district regulations, that grid that I just showed you a moment ago.
Yes.
Okay, so we're on here. Okay, now, it's correct that the property that is currently the subject of this application does not measure 40,000 square feet in size. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. In fact, the property measures probably about 20,900 or so square feet, give or take a few hundred square feet.
Yes.
Okay. Let me direct your attention on what I showed you, section 414-15, notes to schedule, paragraph A. You see that?
I do.
You see note 1?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to read along with me and ask you a couple of questions. I'm going to read along, I ask you to follow along as I read. And I quote, capital A, note 1, colon, garden apartment and elevator apartment developments shall be permitted subject to site plan approval by the planning board, provided that. And open paragraph number 1, close paragraph, close parentheses, excuse me, it says, and I quote, I continue, there shall be a minimum site of 20,000 square feet for each garden apartment development and a minimum site of 40,000 square feet for each elevator apartment development. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so this property under note A1 that accompanies the schedule of regulations does not meet the minimum site requirement of 40,000 square feet for an elevator apartment development. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And elevator apartment. Now, have a look at the attachment, the zoning attachments grid, if you will. You see that?
Yes.
Do you see the lot dimension columns 5, 6, 7 on that grid next to the RM residential medium density development? Do you see where I'm directing your attention?
I do.
Okay.
Columns 5, 6, and 7?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, this property is located in the RM zone, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, for the RM zone, the minimum, we've established that the minimum lot size for an elevator apartment is 40,000 square feet, right? Just established that, right?
Yes.
So, it is, would you strike that? Then a property that doesn't have a 40,000 square foot minimum lot is not permitted as of right to be developed for an apartment, elevator apartment. Is that correct?
It's a bulk variance, a lot of areas.
No, that's not my question. Not my question. Very simple, yes or no question. Very simple. Could you read back my question, please?
That a property that doesn't have a 40,000 square foot minimum lot is not permitted as of right to be developed for an apartment, elevator apartment, is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, let me show you what's the definition of 41411. See that?
I do.
You've seen this before.
I have it in my folder, yes.
You had to work with it to work on this project, right?
Yes.
Do you see a definition titled apartment house, garden type?
I do.
Am I reading correctly when I read its definition to provide, and I quote, a multifamily residential structure of not more than 2 stories containing 3 or more dwelling units. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Now, take a look and tell me, if you would, if there's anywhere in 41411 where elevator apartment is defined.
No.
Now, let's go back to the chart I was asking a few questions about. Do you see the column number do you see column number 15, 14 and 15?
Yes.
And look, push your eye down about, immediately the first new number where it says stories, under column 14. That number is number 3, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And I'm laughing because the font is just so small. But
Yeah, well,
yes.
I apologize for the copying abilities of various copying machines.
But yes, I agree. It is 3 stories.
And in at least reading this chart, is it fair, strike that. Would I be correct in reading or associating the 3 stories building height under column 14, the number 3, to the number of the use mentioned in columns 5, 6, and 7, where it says for 1 and 2 family?
Yes.
Okay. So it would be fair to associate 3 stories as being a permitted height for 1 and 2 family in the RM zone, correct?
Correct.
Okay, let's slide down a little further down column 14 and go to the number, do you see the number 2 a little bit farther down in column 14?
I do.
Okay. Now, if you slide your eye from number 2 to the left, back to columns 5, 6, and 7,
I see that.
And then back to, would it be fair to associate the height, the permitted height, or the maximum permitted height called out for a garden apartment in the RM zone to be 2 stories?
Yes.
Now, let's just slide down a little bit further. Now, just a little bit further down on this chart, right below where all the standards are called out, R-M, medium density residential district called out. Just beneath it, there is under column 1, under district, there is called out something called the R-H, higher density residential district, right? Did you follow that with me?
I see that row.
I'm correct. Okay. And at least for the R-H district, the notation under columns 5 through at least 18 is the same requirements for the RM district as noted above, correct?
According to this table, yes.
Well, is there any other standard that would apply besides the one that would be in this table? Yes or no?
The only other standard I'm going through memory is that the RM zone, RH zone allows for a higher density, and that may be related to a note in the schedule or something like that.
Okay.
But I don't see density called out on this table.
Well, I'll make life easy. Let's go to column 18. So we're not playing guessing game.
Okay.
Column 8, does column 18 call for floor area ratio?
It does, and
Okay.
it says see some note, which I can't read.
Right. Okay. And if we go to the notes, move this along. I'm going to try to find density, so we'll just get this out of the way. I'll come back to that one. I'll come back to it. Come back. Yeah, I'm looking at let me also show you the chart, if I could. Look at the second page of the chart. You see that? See the district called out on the second page of the chart?
I do.
And the name of that district is infill development, is that correct?
Correct.
And the principal use allowed as of right there is a residential use, correct?
Correct.
And it's allowed, it provides for an accessory use of a retail or commercial use, correct?
I see that, correct.
Okay. Now, let's move along for infill development on this chart to columns 5, 6, 7. Okay? The minimum lot area was 20,000 square feet, correct?
Yes.
For an infill development. And the width and the depth are called out by this chart under note 17 in section 414Q.
Yes.
That's 15Q, correct?
Correct.
So if we go to 414, I'll show you 414, 15Q. Now, have a look at 414, 15Q, what's meant in mind. And if the paragraph paragraph number 1 under 414.15Q reads, and I quote, lot dimensions. There shall be frontage on any two streets bordering the property with a minimum dimension on each street frontage of 100 feet. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Now, the property that's the subject of this development, is it 100 feet on each square, on each lot, on each side? Do you know?
I believe it is,
It
yes.
is. So it's 100 feet along Boulevard East, the minimum, at least.
Yes,
And it's 100 feet along 67th Street.
I believe it is, yes.
And you testified earlier that the lot size is more than 20,000 square feet. All right? Yes?
I did testify that it was over 20,000 square feet, yes.
Okay. Got the wrong plans to ask you about. Now, let's ask a few more questions if I could
Mr.
about.
Kantrowitz,
Yeah.
give Mr. McDonough a moment. I think
Oh.
he's confirming the 100 square feet on both, on 57th and Boulevard East. both.
Okay.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, why don't you look quickly and just confirm your testimony?
Let's just for the record, make reference to what you're looking at to confirm your testimony, so nobody's guessing and nobody's.
I'm looking at a plan set comprised of multiple sheets, actually stapled together, prepared by both Jenny Engineering and CPA Architecture. And trying to find a dimension on this.
Is there a date on that?
Last dated. First page is last dated 8/4/14. Second page is last dated 9/17/14. And I believe all the remainder sheets are last dated 9/17/14.
Thank you.
And I know this will be very obvious, but in case anybody has to read this transcript, a subsequent revision to the plan for interior design or showing a different parking dimension or something like that would not affect the dimensions of the lot, correct?
The outbound of the property has not changed. And Mr. Chairman, just to confirm, we are 100 feet on either side.
Okay. Now, let me show you, and give a copy to Mr. Alonzo. I'll show you what's titled Uniform Growth-Based Affordable Housing Production, section 1214-105, and it continues on 106 and on. Why don't you take a minute or two to look at that?
Okay, I've read it.
Okay, now, again, a few short questions. Section 414-105, capital A, sets forth the applicable zoning districts that apply for this section of the ordinance, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and one of those districts under A, open paren, 1, closed paren, is the RM, medium density residential district, correct?
correct.
Okay, and going down to capital C, walk your eyes along with me as I read it. Quote, residential development requirements, period. All new residential development of 10 dwelling units or more in any applicable zoning district shall be required to provide affordable housing at the ratio of at least one affordable unit for every 8 new market rate residential units proposed. The affordable housing requirement shall be rounded to the 100th decimal place.
Yes.
Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Okay. Are you aware whether the town of West New York has changed, amended, or supplemented 414-105 capital C in any sense different from what I just read to you a moment ago?
I am not.
Okay. Now, as far as you're aware, strike that. Do you have any reason, do you have any basis to point to any legislative act performed by the governing body of the town of West New York to support any view that 414-105C does not apply?
Any act by the governing body of West New York, no.
Okay. Now, let's turn to 414-106, priority for meeting affordable housing requirements. Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Okay, section A, and I'm paraphrasing, provides that the number of affordable housing units shall be met and required first through on-site construction. And it continues, and I quote, on-site construction, typo, shall be treated as the highest and best preference for provision of affordable housing units. Did I read that correctly?
Correct.
And capital B provides that if on-site cannot be accomplished, then the obligation shall be met through the creation of affordable units elsewhere. I'm sorry.
Slow down a
I
little.
apologize.
It's okay, it cannot be accomplished.
Cannot be accomplished, comma, then the obligation shall be met through the creation of affordable units elsewhere within the town of West New York in accordance with one of the following options. And the ordinance then begins to identify different options under subsection B. Right?
Yes.
Now, in your testimony, you did not mention or call out that any of the proposed units in this project were to be restricted as affordable housing units. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I'm sorry, when I say affordable housing units, Mr. McDonough, you're a planner, I practice land use law in the state, but perhaps others are not as familiar. Let's just set terms and ground rules so we're not confused. When I say affordable housing, I mean housing designated as, quote, affordable to households of low and moderate income, as those terms have been defined in the regulations in the New Jersey Council on Affordable Housing. Is that a fair?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay. No. So that when I've just asked you that series of questions and I talk, do you strike that? When you see that the West New York zoning code uses the word affordable units, do you understand affordable to mean the definition that I just called, that I just recited to you?
The short answer is yes.
Okay. Yeah. I think you also testified, if I heard it correctly, that there was no affordable housing proposed for the proposed development under consideration by the board. Is that correct?
Correct. This is a 100% market rate project.
And just to confirm that, so that there's no uncertainty and nothing left implicit, there is no intention and no part of the developer's program includes any sort of payment to the town of West New York to be dedicated for affordable housing activities in lieu of on-site construction of affordable housing units. Is that a correct statement? In connection with this application as presented to this board? That's a yes or a no question.
And I'm actually trying to recall, because I know there was discussion with one of the members of the public about COA, and I'm trying to remember if the answer was the applicant will do what the applicant is obligated to do at the time of building permits, and it was.
Let's ask it much more simply. When you testified on the direct examination, did you indicate that you did not? You indicated that there would be no affordable units constructed on site.
Right.
Okay. Did you testify that there would be no in lieu payments provided as part of this development?
On my direct, I may have, yes. I honestly don't remember where we went with the dialogue and the cross-examination.
Okay. If you can answer this, if not, I'm sure Mr. Sweat will be happy to answer it. Do you know, standing here, right here and now, will this developer, and this is a yes or no question, do you know or you don't know, will this developer provide on-site, we've established that the application is not providing on-site. Will this developer make payments in lieu of constructing on-site affordable units? And when I say payments in lieu, I mean payments to the town of West New York dedicated for its affordable housing activities. If you know, do you know whether this developer will do that?
My honest answer is I don't know.
Okay, you don't know
the answer to that question.
Now, do you participate in the preparation of the application of this particular development before and leading up to its filing with the board in or around, let's say, June of 2014?
My submitted report coincided with the submission of the application.
Okay. Is it fair then that you were familiar with the substance and the contents of the application forms, if not necessarily the form itself that was submitted and signed.
Fair assessment, yes.
Okay, okay. And again, you indicated you were familiar with strike that. Now, let me ask you another question. Now, let me show you what's been marked as 414.111A, other regulations. See that?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to read that, and I quote, capital A. Every development applicant shall be required to submit a proposed affordable housing production plan, parentheses, AHPP, at the time the application is made, unquote. I read that correctly?
The first sentence, yes.
Okay. As the planner on the team, would you have been charged or deputized with that aspect of this proposal related to affordable housing?
In terms of actually putting together an affordable housing compliance plan?
No, in terms of, would you, as the planner associated on the team of the applicant, would you have been the professional charged with or have delegated to it the duty of preparing an affordable housing production plan called out by 414.111A?
Typically, a planner would prepare an affordable I was not charged with that as part of this application.
Okay, and are you aware whether an affordable housing production plan was submitted at the time application for this project was made?
I am not aware of any affordable housing production plan.
That you're not aware of the plan that was submitted at the time that this application was made?
Correct.
Okay. Would it be a fair conclusion to say affirmatively that no affordable housing production plan was submitted at the time application was made on this project? Would that be a fair and accurate statement?
I did not see one.
Oh, well, I'm asking you, then let's put the two conclusions together. And then, let's just talk straight. If you were charged with that by virtue of your planning expertise, and you did not see one, can you conclude then that no proposed affordable housing production plan was submitted at the time application was made on this project?
That is a fair assessment.
Okay, and one last thing. You've read a lot of ordinances in your life, correct?
I live ordinances,
Okay.
yes.
And you've read a lot of regulations and so forth in your life?
Yes.
Especially zoning ones. Okay. Is it your understanding that the word shall is understood differently from the word may when it pops up in an ordinance?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that the word shall speaks of a mandatory duty or obligation?
Exactly.
And the mandatory duty obligation is different from a voluntary or optional task that one might be charged with doing.
Agreed.
Okay. Now, well, yeah, I don't want to keep killing trees. Recycle the paper. Now, section 414, I should say chapter 414, that we've been talking about and been having a few questions asked about. That's the zoning chapter of the Code of West New York, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you've read 414.
I have.
And it calls out different standards of all different types having to do with development in West New York.
Yes.
Okay. Now, let me show you what's been marked as 414 hyphen, let me give you council a copy. I'm sorry, let me ask you to look along with me at 414.25. 414-20, but off-street parking and loading requirements. Did I read that correctly as to what section 25 of chapter 414 is titled as?
Yes.
Okay. And it's evident that that is a section within the zoning code of the borough, of the town of West New York.
Correct.
Okay. Now, look down with me at capital A, and that provides, and I quote, "All off-street parking and loading facilities shall be designed at least according to the dimensions as contained in Article 3 definitions of this chapter." Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So as a planner reading 414-25A to determine the dimension of an off-street parking and loading facility, you would look at least by this direction in A to the dimensions contained in Article 3 definitions of this chapter. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's walk with me then to the definitions. Now let me show you what's been marked, what section, you've seen this before, you mentioned before, section 414-11, the definition section.
Yes.
Right. I'm going to flip over a couple of pages down, the definition of parking space. Where it says parking space?
Yes.
Okay. And look along with me as I read it. It says, and I quote, "A space which, comma, exclusive of driveways and turning areas," unquote, "is at least 9.5 feet wide and 20 feet long. Driveways or aisles to serve said parking spaces shall be at least 24 feet wide." Did I read that correctly?
You read it correctly.
Okay, so the section 414-11, the definition section, which is referred to by the section 25 of chapter 414, defines, or at least calls out dimensions for a parking space, and it also calls out a dimension for a driveway or an aisle serving, correct?
It does.
And it calls it out dimension.
It defines a dimension.
Okay,
yes.
good. Now, and you have no reason, by the way, you have no reason to dispute that this is the current ordinance in effect in the town of West New York currently, correct?
It's what's online, correct.
Okay, so that's what's currently in effect?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you know what the size of a parking space is called for by RSIS?
9 by 18.
Now, do you know whether the RSIS parking space standard of 9 by 18 has any other provisions or dimensions called out beside the 9 by 18 size?
I know there's the, I'll call it the relaxation clause.
No, not my question. Please listen carefully to my question. My question is, do you know whether RSIS calls out explicitly any different dimensional size for a parking space beside the 9 by 18 size you just defined it?
No.
Explicitly. That's a yes or no question. It either does have numbers or it doesn't. Yes or no?
Other than the 9 by 18, no.
Thank you. Okay, good. Just for the record, Mr. McDonough, except for the meeting that was held the last time we met, which I think was November 6th. Check the notes.
When Mr. Paraguay was cross-examined at the last meeting, I was not here.
Okay, that was the immediately preceding meeting to tonight.
I've been here for every minute other than that.
Okay. And have you had an opportunity to read a transcript of the meeting that you were not present at?
I don't believe it's been produced yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't believe it's been produced.
Okay. And just to be clear, you haven't listened to any tape recording or anything else, verbatim reproduction of the words spoken at the meeting,
No, I
meetings
did not.
prior to this one? Have you had an opportunity to view the shadow study, or shade or shadow study, that Mr. Arecibia's office produced for the months October through March? That was, asked about.
I believe I was here for that presentation.
Let me ask you again. Were you here for the shadow study for the months October through March? Let me strike that, let me do this. Early on, Mr. Arecibia's office produced a shadow study. Do you recall that?
I did.
Okay. The first shadow study he produced several meetings in, at the request of the chairman, I believe, was a shadow study for for the months April through September, May through September. Do you recall that being done?
I do.
Are you aware that Mr. Arecibia produced a second shadow, I should say a shadow or shade study for the months October through April?
If it was presented at the last hearing, I have not seen it.
Now, my question is, are you aware whether Mr. Arecibia produced a shadow study for the months October through March? Excuse me, through April?
No.
No, you're not aware whether he did. Have you seen any evidence of shade or shadow cast by the proposed building for the months October through April?
I have not seen that analysis.
I'm sorry?
I have not seen that analysis.
You've not seen any analysis of any sort of shade study or shadow
I've
study?
seen what was submitted at 2 hearings ago.
Okay. Would any information in a shadow or shade study for the months October through April be pertinent to any of the opinions that you offered in this case? Yes or no?
Yes, to an extent.
We go on to a few other areas. Do you recall, excuse me, do you recall a couple of meetings back when you were testifying, I think in reply to several of the questions that members of the public were asking? Do you recall being asked what the neighborhood area that you considered to be relevant to this project was?
Yes.
And do you recall, not a trick question, so you want to let your notes, do you recall what area you articulated as being the relevant neighborhood to your the analysis and the opinion you gave?
I believe it came right out of the quote from the Medici case that talks about the immediately adjacent properties. I didn't directly quote from Medici, but I paraphrased.
What's the definition of adjacent?
Next door, next to.
Touching?
Yes.
What's the definition of immediate?
Same.
Okay. Am I then to understand, based on your answers to the last two questions, that the neighborhood relevant to your analysis is exclusively and nothing more than those properties that touch on your property, the proposed property?
And the property across the street.
And the property across the street?
Yes, that's certainly considered as part of the analysis. And again, I'm falling back on Medici.
Nothing else? No other properties are relevant to your analysis?
The question is whether it's the first prong of the negative criteria, whether the variances can be granted without substantial detriment to the area, to the public good. And Medici says to take a look at the immediately adjacent properties.
Well, let's be a little more precise than that. I'm gonna take a look at 70, famous 70, section 70 land use law, which I'm sure you've seen countless times.
I have.
Okay? And I quote the last full paragraph, you can look along with me, quote, "No variance or other relief may be granted under the terms of this section, including a variance or other relief involving inherently beneficial use, comma, without a showing that such variance or other relief,
Beneficial use,
comma, without a showing that such variance or other relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and will not substantially impair the intent and the purpose of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance." Did I read that correctly?
You did.
So you just testified that you read that section to apply or to refer to a neighborhood consisting of those properties immediately adjacent to the subject property for which variance relief is sought. Am I correct, based on what you just testified to?
And I'm referring to case law that has interpreted that statutory law.
I'm not asking about case law. I'm just asking about what you said. That's all. Am I correct then that you interpret or apply that provision, which we know to be the negative criteria, as an analysis of only those properties immediately adjacent to the subject property?
Yes, based on Medici.
Now, if we look at, where was that big plan? That's the zone. Okay, let's look at T100. Can I look at that, Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
So if we were to pictorially apply your words of immediately adjacent as describing the neighborhood to be analyzed by the negative criteria, the properties would include, and I'm pointing, the large property directly to the east and across Boulevard East from the subject property, which is marked in very dark black on T100, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's one. And it's only the subject property above or to the north of a solid line that runs across the zoning map, correct?
Yes, and I should clarify, Medici may actually say surrounding properties instead of immediately adjacent.
Whoa, stop. What does that mean?
Generally, that's been regarded as within the 200-foot notice, so it may not actually be touching. But
Well, which is it? You testified a moment ago that it's immediately adjacent properties that Medici calls out as being the proper analysis for applying the negative criteria. Just a moment ago, on the reporter, she chooses to commute back, you just said it might be the surrounding properties.
Right.
Which is it?
I was looking for the language in Medici. I'm trying to find it.
How many times do you testify a week as a planner?
4.
How many times a week do you look at the negative criteria language in 70D?
Every time.
Every time. So at least 4 times a week you look at this language.
Yes.
And we're fair to say that you look at this language every week of your practice except when you're on vacation.
Yes.
Okay. So which is it then? Why is there an uncertainty between whether the analysis applies to immediately adjacent properties or something that you just called out as surrounding properties?
I'll go with surrounding.
You'll go with, now you're going to go with surrounding.
Yes.
You're going to recant what you just told me a few moments ago.
Yes.
Now, Do you know you have any, measure, or is there a standard that you use consistently that defines in first let's talk qualitative terms, the word surrounding?
Again,
Strike that. Let me ask you a much more simple. It's a real bad question. You're telling us now that the negative criteria called out by section 70B applies or is applied based upon surrounding properties.
yes.
Now I'm going to ask you what you mean when you say surrounding properties. So I'll ask you this way. Is surrounding properties, when you use that term, used by you consistently in each application where you discuss negative criteria?
Yes.
So if I were to pull out a transcript, some other testimony you gave last week in another town, and you were talking about negative criteria in the surrounding area, surrounding properties, you would identify qualitatively the same properties you're going to talk to me about in a moment. Same qualitative definition of surrounding.
Yes, generally, again, as I said, the search ring is the 200-foot search ring that's part of the notice criteria.
Oh, okay, okay. So now the surrounding properties that you apply the negative criteria for consist of those properties within the 200-foot radius of the perimeter of the subject property. Is that correct?
Those are the priority properties that are reviewed as part of the negative criteria, yes.
Again, that's a wonderful comment and not responsive to my question. I'm simply asking to understand, so I understand what you mean by surrounding. You now mention the word priority properties, which definitionally suggests that there are secondarily some other issues. So let's be clear. Are there other properties beside those within 200 feet of the perimeter of the subject property that comprise your analysis of the negative criteria under 70B?
The negative criteria, the first prong, starts with a review of...
Strike that is not responsive. I'm not talking first prong. I'm only asking him about second prong. So I'll ask the question again and ask you for a responsive answer. Please state for me what strike that. Did you just not say that the surrounding properties that you consider for applying the negative or analyzing the negative criteria consist of those properties that lie within 200 feet of the perimeter of the subject property? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. So now we know exactly what the surrounding properties are, correct?
Those are the
You're
not going to like my answer. Those are the priority properties.
Okay. Do you know the definition of the word priority?
Those are the ones that are the, I'll call it the most sensitive receptors of a proposed development.
And linguistically, most sensitive means there's something that's less sensitive. Do you know that linguistically?
Yes, of course.
Everything. No. So when you say priority properties, that to me means something different from surrounding properties, correct? I'm just trying to find out what are the relevant properties, and I'm having a tough time, but I'll try again. You just said surrounding properties are the ones within 200 feet of the perimeter, correct?
Yes.
Are there any other properties besides those within 200 feet of the perimeter of the subject property that are looked at by you as part of your analysis of the negative criteria? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, so now we've gone from adjacent to surrounding and something else, correct? That's what we've moved in the last 11 minutes.
I'm trying to follow. Yes, I'm trying to follow along with your question. That's all.
I'm only following your answers on the road. That's all I'm doing. Now, if we've now established that the properties you look at are something quantitatively more than those within 200 feet, right? We've established that.
Yes.
So, and just to interject, the 200 feet properties are easy to quantify. That's you take your ruler and you do a measurement, and it's what the tax assessor, the other administrative officer does when you prepare your notice.
Correct.
Okay. So we know exactly what 200 feet are as defined by surrounding. Now, do you use a uniform method for determining what the additional properties are beyond those that are surrounding the subject property in a, not this, but in a development application or variance?
Yes.
So, again, if I went to other testimony you give, I hear the same thing. You talk about surrounding properties, and you talk about some other properties that lie outside the 200 feet that you gave consideration to for
Yes.
analyzing the variance.
It all comes down to the specifics of the application.
Oh, so there's no one standard that you use?
There is no one size fits all.
Because as a planner, you get to look at every application and decide for one application, it's one area of properties that apply in analyzing the criteria, and for another application, you get to look at a different number of properties. Right?
Correct.
Oh, good. Now, then as a planner, is there, and can you articulate a set of neutral principles that you apply? Strike it, let's go there. For this application, what were, we know what the 200-foot properties are, they're called out, right?
Yes.
So those are easily identified as the ones that notice were given to and show up somewhere on the sheet or in some piece of application. You know what those are.
Yes.
And I can take a ruler out and measure the 200 foot. Eyeballing this, can you tell me where the 200 foot is?
It's the block of properties that extend beyond into the south of the subject and to the north on the other side of the street. I forget what the name of that development is on the other side. I believe it's the Halifax building. And a ring drawn that would extend up to McKinley. Don't know how deep those properties are, but probably to the other side of McKinley. The ring is not shown on this particular key map.
Well, since you're gonna answer some questions, and since the negative criteria are important, can you take a moment and look through your papers and tell me exactly what properties are comprehended by the 200-foot marker?
I don't have the property owner's list in front of me.
Well, can you?
I don't have it. I don't know. I'm not trying to be evasive, I don't know.
Did you have it the night you testified on direct examination in front of this board?
No.
Were you able to identify precisely what properties lie within the 200-foot circle the night you testified before the board?
No,
Okay.
no.
Okay, fine. Let's go on to what I'll call the additional properties beyond the 200-foot surrounding properties, okay? You testified a few minutes ago that the surrounding properties, that category, had priority in your analysis, correct? I think your word, priority.
Right.
Correct? Okay. That suggests to me that there are other properties that have a bearing on your analysis, but don't have the same level of bearing as the surrounding properties within 200 feet. Is that a fair understanding of your comment priority?
Yes, a planning analysis tries to look comprehensively. So we not only look at the immediate properties, we toured the greater neighborhood, we went up to the top of the hill, all the way up to Park, and of course I'm here in West New York a lot, so we look at the community at large as well.
Whoa, you just said a bunch, but let's break all that down.
Okay.
For this application, identify all of the properties that you gave consideration to when you considered, when rendered your opinion as to the negative criteria.
Identify all the properties that we considered?
Yes, you just told me what your analysis entailed in terms of the non-priority properties, and you just ticked off a bunch of different categories, and I just want you to identify what they are so I can ask you some questions.
Sure, I can't identify the specific properties, but I can tell you, I have personally walked the 4 streets that flank the block that the subject property is on multiple times over the course of many months, many seasons. Again, a much slower pace than with a vehicle. I didn't go on the adjacent properties, that would be trespass, but I tried to gauge what one would see from those subject properties, looking down onto the subject. I've driven the area, I've driven up to Park Avenue and beyond, and again, just as part of my normal practice, I'm here in West New York on a regular basis and
I would say, fairly familiar with the community at large. I don't live here, but I do a lot of work here.
Madam Reporter, could you read back for me the answer that Mr. McDonough gave at the beginning of his just concluded answer, talking where he used that the words, I can't tell you precisely. I think those were the words he used.
Sure, I can't identify the specific properties. I can tell you I personally walked the 4 streets that flank the block because the subject property is on multiple, or many times over the course of many months, many seasons.
Okay, so fair based on what you testified to, that there are some properties in the municipal boundaries of West New York that you gave some consideration to in analyzing the negative criteria that lie beyond the 200 feet, but you can't tell me standing here now what those properties are. Yes or no? That's what you testified to. Yes or no? Am I right or wrong? No. Is that what you testified to a moment ago? Yes or no?
That I don't have a list of those properties. No, I don't have a list of those properties.
And when you testified to the board on your direct examination, did you call out specifically what those properties were that you were now talking about that went into your negative criteria analysis?
No.
Yes or no? Are you able, in any of the papers that you have, to identify the properties within 200 feet of the subject property?
It's not, no, not without a property owner's list. I can certainly tell you the properties that are touching the subject.
Yes, we're gonna get to those, but you can't tell me what the 200 foot are, right? Excuse me, what the list of properties over 200 foot.
I do not have the property owner's
And
list.
during your direct examination, did you call out with specificity either by block or lot, or by specific geographical reference, as in up to number 6700 Boulevard, or up to number 2767 Street? Did you call out with specificity the properties that lie within the 200 square foot linear distance in discussing your testimony on direct examination earlier this year?
I did not.
Go back to our handy dandy chart. Is that good? You have it in front of you, Steve? It might bear a pink post-it. Is that it?
That's it.
Look at paragraph, look at column 18, please, under the RM district.
Yes.
That's a column calling out floor area ratio, correct?
Yes.
And it calls out 3 to 1 for elevator apartments. Is that correct?
It does, with a reference to a note that I can't read.
Okay, well, looks to me like note 8, section 414.15H. I'll get you 414.15H so you can determine for yourself whether that's correct. Not here, though. You got it? H defines floor area ratio, correct?
It does.
Okay, and H also talks about floor area being a principle to control intensity of development, correct? Under sub-paragraph 2 of H. Correct?
Yes.
And H, by the way, talks about the availability of bonuses, correct?
Yes.
Bonuses are not part of this application, correct?
Correct.
And as long as we're on this, we'll come back to the density, as I said we would. Let's look down the page, if you would, up to note, paragraph, capital I. See that? It says note 9.
Yes.
Okay. Do you see where it provides along the second line? It says, except, quote, that the maximum residential density permitted in elevator apartment developments shall not exceed 110 units per net residential acre for family units and 150 units per net residential acre for housing units for the elevators.
I see it.
Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Okay, so fair to conclude then that the density for an elevator apartment is, excuse me, the density for an elevator apartment shall not exceed 110 units per residential acre.
Correct.
And fair that the density called out here is about 3 times that, or the proposed density for this development? About
Yes.
334 and change units per acre?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And also fair that the floor area ratio called out is about almost 4 times the 3-to-1 permitted for elevator apartments.
Yes.
So it's about 11 and a half to 1, correct? And if you can, and perhaps as a planner you have the dexterity, could you tell me if you could, can you tell me how many for garden apartments, see where it's provides the garden apartments back on the chart?
Yes.
It calls for a lot coverage of 35%, correct? I know the numbers are small. I'm suffering from my eyesight too.
Yes.
Okay, and the coverage proposed in this application is about 97% lot coverage?
Correct.
And even, even for elevator apartments, it's either 55 or 75%, depending on what's called out by note 15A, correct?
Yes.
And again, the 97% proposed exceeds that, correct?
Correct.
Now, am I correct that, so we've established that the lot area is not met in this case, correct? I mean, for an elevator apartment.
Yes. Correct.
We've established that the lot coverage is, and that's standard that a variance is sought for, correct?
Correct.
And we've established that to the extent one might call this out as an elevator apartment use, that the density measure is a subject of variance relief.
That is also correct.
And likewise, to the extent that this is considered an elevator use, that the floor area and to the extent that the floor area ratio even applies here, that the floor area ratio is a subject of a variance.
Agreed.
Correct?
Yes.
And I think you told me, let me ask you this. In your opinion, does the ratio, does the off-street parking requirement of West New York apply, or does the RSIS standard apply?
RSIS supersedes the local.
For the I'm talking for the number of parking spaces, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I think you testified that even with the RIS standard, your application is right now 2 spaces short based upon the
Close.
arithmetic.
Yes.
It's close, but it doesn't comply.
Yes.
Okay. And I think you testified earlier that the RSIS would govern the parking size of the stall, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the stalls that are designed don't comply with RSIS, correct?
That's correct.
In fact, there's not a single stall in the entire development except for handicap stalls that complies with RSIS.
Agreed.
Now, what? I forgot to set this up. Let's look at the zone grid again. Height of the building. Garden apartment is allowed to be two stories high, right?
Yes.
Okay? You don't comply with that.
No.
You don't comply.
We're a 13th story.
And even if this were considered an elevator apartment use, that's 12 stories. You don't comply with that.
Correct.
Okay. And you don't comply with the building height either. Is that correct?
By 15 feet, we're over.
Okay. And with regard to each of the, I'll call side, rear, or front yard setbacks. I mean, I know it's a corner property, so you create two sides. Excuse me, there are two side yards and two front yards that are applicable, not the standard rear and sides because of the corner, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if we look at those standards on columns 8, 9, and 10 in the grid attachment, you don't comply with any of those front or side yard standards for if this were a garden apartment use, correct?
Correct.
And you don't comply with any of the standards for front or side for an apartment use, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, and you don't have a loading limit on site, correct?
That is also correct.
And that's a variance you're looking for too?
Yes.
Okay. Now, maybe I missed something, but is there any standard in the zoning ordinance of Western New York that you do comply with that's called out on 414 on the chart I'm holding you?
That's why we're here.
No, not my question again. Please listen. Is there any standard called out on this chart that I've been holding up for the residential medium zoning district that this application does comply with?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The number one requirement, use.
Well, okay. So your testimony is you comply with the use because your testimony
Absolutely.
is that an elevator apartment is a permitted use.
Absolutely.
Okay. Putting aside your opinion on that, putting that aside, is there any other standard, not use? And let me back up a second. You understand the difference between standard and use, correct?
Yes.
Is there any standard? Don't talk to me about use. Is there any standard called out on this chart that this proposal complies with?
From a zoning standpoint, a zoning standard?
Please listen to my question. Your attorney will be able to redirect you. On this chart 414, is there any standard? Please don't talk to me about the use. Is there any standard that your proposal does comply with?
No.
Yeah. Let's talk about adjacent properties, just for a moment. And when I use the word adjacent, just for our conversation right now, I'm going to talk about properties literally touching or part of the subject property.
It's a good place to start.
Okay. And by the way, you were here a couple of years back when this application was brought without what's colloquially known as the data property, correct?
I think I've been involved with 3 applications on this property.
Oh, you have? What 3 have you been involved with?
There was another one on this property before Meridian was involved.
And what was that?
It was another high-rise.
A high-rise? Just tell me what the general parameters were.
I don't recall the general parameters. I think they were similar in mass and scale to what was proposed here. The application may have been withdrawn, or I don't know if it was, I don't believe it was formally prosecuted by them.
Okay, all right, let's come back. But you recall being here for the application about 2 years ago that did not involve the Dado property, that single-family house to the left of the
to the south, yes.
To the left or south of the repair station, owned by a very lovely elderly gentlewoman.
Yes.
I'll refer to her. I think her name was Data. It was Miss Data. So you were here when and testified as part of the application without the Dado property for this proposal, correct?
I did.
Okay, fine. Now, let's just ask a simple question. This property is proposing to utilize 3 lots, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Those 3 lots are the lot on 967th Street, which is a single family.
Yes.
The lot of the repair station, and the Dado lot, correct?
Yes. Just trying to remember if the repair station was comprised of 2 lots or not, but I'll accept that there's three lots.
Is the Dado property a conforming use of the property?
Is the Dado property, I believe it is, yes.
Okay. Is the single-family house a conforming use of the property?
I believe it is, yes.
Are you aware as to the habitability of this single-family house on 67th Street? Are you aware of the habitability of it? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Isn't it a fact that the house is habitable?
The lights were on tonight, yes.
So people are living there?
Yes.
Okay. And are you aware of the habitability of the Dado house?
The lights were not on. I don't know if Ms. Dado still lives there or if she's moved to Florida or wherever. I don't know.
Are you aware whether the Dado property conforms to the zoning for this property, for this zone? Just the Dado lot alone. Are you aware of it?
Dimensionally?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are you aware whether it conforms to the various bulk standards that are associated in the RM zone?
Could you speak up, please?
I'm sorry. Are you aware whether the Dado property conforms with the bulk standards for that particular lot?
I don't know.
And are you aware whether the property at 967th Street with a single-family house that has the lights on it, as specified, conforms with the bulk standards for that property?
I don't know.
Mr. Kantrowitz, I think we're going to take a 10-minute break now. We've been going on for some period of time.
Great.
So why doesn't everybody come back at 9:30, please, and we'll
Great.
get started promptly.
Once I got started,
There you go. I don't want to you know, you testify that how is it today? I want to give a chance to chapter and verse. What do you know? I know what it is. No, he's actually,
So there are other things out there. So you go to other areas. This No. I said, you know what goes on? No. When I got well, they're surrounding and then you're the surrounding. Well, talking about the one and then I clicked on this case, the only precise, did you test the I wanted to jump up and choke you, but other than that, that's
Terrible, you know what, that's saw my apartment at a loss?
Yes,
You don't know.
should we continue with the hearing? It's almost 25 up. My intention, if possible, is to go as close to 10:30 as we can. See how much we can get done. I'll make the announcement at the end of the meeting, but this matter will not be concluded tonight, obviously. And it'll be adjourned to our regular meeting in January, not December, but January. It's January 22nd. I'll make the announcement again. There's various reasons for that. One is it gives our stenographer plenty of time to get whatever transcripts are necessary. Also, it gives the board only has one more meeting, and it's the regular meeting on December 11th. And what we intend to do is to take up some of the matters we put off for a long time, since we know we won't finish this matter by the end of the year anyway, which had been my intent. Since that's not going to be happening, we will postpone this to our regular meeting January 22nd when the time comes.
One, just point of information, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, in due respect, since I'm not, I haven't counting days, but I think we might be able to say, when the applicant needs to make a statement on the record that it consents to extending the time within which the board must decide this application through the January 22nd meeting, or that for any reason gets snowed out by another subsequent meeting.
Mr. Alonso, just stand up for a second.
Can I address that point at the conclusion of tonight's hearing?
Why?
I'm not free to speak with my client.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. What I'll be looking for is a blanket approval going to whenever this board makes a decision down the road.
Right, but typically it gets extended on a meeting-by-meeting basis.
That is not what I want.
I understand that.
Okay.
Good.
Obviously, I'm not typical. What can I tell you? No, because we just don't want that hanging over our head. I mean, everybody understands that we've changed the procedure really to hopefully have this move quicker than it would have otherwise. The last time we had public questions after each witness, which we did not this time, so that we can move it quicker. Whether it's moving quicker or not is a different issue. But certainly the board is doing everything that it can to move it as quickly as possible within the guidelines, not only of the application itself, but also the other work that the board has in front of it. Taking all that into consideration, as well as the 5 trees that were planted in front of Park Avenue, which again we appreciate, we're going to be looking for a waiver, an approval, whatever the appropriate word is.
I understand there's some legal implications that go along with that, and I need to make sure my client is fully aware of
That's fine.
what they are before I can make that representation.
Okay, and if he doesn't, you have to tell me what legal implications you're talking about. Giving up the right to appeal because the decision was not made in a timely manner?
There are statutory provisions which deal with the timing of an application. And I don't think an applicant is required to just, as a blanket statement, waive those rights that they have under the statute.
Well,
And generally, it's done on a meeting-by-meeting basis. Because we
I don't
may
understand.
agree at this time. Now, what would happen if, let's say we get to January, okay? Because I know that at the end of this month, at least 4 board members.
Okay, let me put it this way.
Well, I'm sure that-
No, I understand, but let me put it this way. What I'm looking for is, I guess, a waiver of timeliness regarding a decision as long as the applicant feels that the board is moving in a reasonable manner.
Right.
I'm going to do it that way.
No, I understand that, but it
Because-
has to be visited every
No,
week.
I'm not looking, I'm just telling you, I'm not looking for that.
Well, let me just give you a scenario.
It doesn't have to be.
Let me just give you a scenario.
Go ahead.
By the end of this month, 4 board members' terms will have expired. Correct?
Maybe more,
I think at least 4.
maybe 5.
Also, Mr. Rodas just resigned, so we need to have.
And we don't know if Mr. Garcia is taking the test. So there may be 6 board members who are in jeopardy.
Correct. we would be waiving on the assumption that the next Board of Commissioners meeting, all those,
That would be the December meeting, right? Let's say that didn't happen. Fine. Would you be willing then to wait till the January Commissioners meeting to see what happened?
well, the problem is we don't know
Excuse me,
ultimately
excuse
what
me,
happened.
excuse me. You probably would be willing to wait till the January meeting. Maybe not past that. Follow me, all right? That's what I mean by reasonableness, and that will be in the hands of the applicant.
The problem is reasonableness is subject to interpretation. And that's why I would say, I have no problem waiting the time period.
I'm putting the definition of reasonableness completely in the hands of the applicant. That's all I'm doing.
I just need to discuss it with my client.
Okay. I'm saying that as long as the board is moving in a timely manner, in a reasonable manner, the applicant waives its appeal regarding timeliness. But that is completely within the, believe me, I'll frame it in such a way that the applicant waives its appeal regarding timeliness, which is just over here, you know what I'm saying. As long as the applicant feels that the board is moving in a timely manner. And that relates to the Board of Commissioners also.
Right, but then, that would.
So if the applicant-
Reserve the right to withdraw.
Of course.
Any consent.
Of course.
Which
As
is
long
the same
as,
as me.
no, as long as, no, because that way you don't have to be asked every meeting. As long as the applicant feels that the board is moving in a reasonable manner. And I trust Mr. Swade regarding that. I mean, he's been reasonable so far. I mean, the way he answered the questions, things like that.
Right, I understand.
Okay?
But I'll review that with my client and I will have a response by the end of the meeting.
Okay, I mean, and quite frankly, the other half of the coin also applies. If the applicant felt at any given period of time that either the Board of Commissioners, because it wasn't filling, or the board itself was not moving in a reasonable manner, the applicant would have an opportunity to apprise the board of that, and that's that. Then the withdrawal would take place.
Right, but you gotta understand that when you do something like that, which is not what the norm is, what the statute requires, it's open up for interpretation on an appeal.
Mr. Alonso, change is always frightening.
I know, and we just don't want to.
Well, I would word it so that it would be completely in your hands.
I'll review with my client.
Okay, don't fret.
I'm not afraid.
Okay.
I'm not afraid.
All right, Mr. Cantor, let's continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McDonough, I want to just ask you, sorry, let me get my.
That was a trick.
No, that's okay.
The mic is low.
Mr. McDonough, let me ask you a couple of questions about your report, if I could.
Sure.
Do you have a copy of it in front of you?
I do.
Okay. Let me ask you a few questions about your report, and that's the report you submitted as part of this application, dated June 3, 2014, correct?
Yes,
I can show you page 5 of that report.
I'm there.
Okay. Now, in paragraph 3, you call out a height variance and indicate that a height of 150 is proposed, where the maximum of 135 is permitted. Correct? Read that correctly?
Yes.
Now, isn't it a fact that that statement hinges on this board granting you a variance for lot size?
No.
No, okay, fine. So, let's look at it this way. Your lot is not 40,000 square feet, correct?
Correct.
Your lot is 20,000 square feet.
Yes.
Correct. And now, according to the chart, for a 20,000 square foot property, what is the maximum permitted height in feet?
For a garden apartment, which has a minimum lot area requirement of 20,000 square feet, The maximum allowable height is 35 feet.
Okay, again, that wasn't my question, so I'll ask it again. For a property that does not have 40,000 square feet, what is the maximum permitted height in the RM zone?
The two are not related, they're severable.
They're severable.
They are.
Okay. So you posit that because you are in an RM zone, even though you do not meet the bulk requirement of 40,000 square feet, that you're entitled to call out the variance based upon your presumably meeting the 40,000 square feet. Yes or no?
One is not independent of the other.
No. Answer my question, yes or no. How you presume that you call out the height differential of 135 permitted versus 150 proposed based upon a presumption as if you have 40,000 square feet on the lot. Isn't that correct?
No.
No. Okay. And therefore, the height called out by the chart next in number 15 along the same line as the garden apartment use minimum lot of 20,000 square feet has no meaning as far as you're concerned for this application.
Those are standards that pertain to garden apartments, not to elevator apartments.
Right. And I take it, therefore, that the legislator, in this case the city fathers and mothers of the town of West New York, really just wanted to spill some ink and put down 20,000 next to garden apartment under the column minimum square feet and 40,000 under elevator apartments, even though by your own testimony they're not related or not relevant. Correct?
Those are bulk standards that apply to that use.
They're bulk standards that apply to that use.
Yes, that's the way the table is structured.
Oh, okay. So, and therefore you determine what the use is, and then you call out what the minimum lot size is.
Typical structure of an ordinance, yes.
Okay. So therefore, because you call out use, the height that obtains for that use obtains based upon your already having received variance for the lot size for that use.
No.
Okay, back up a second.
The use is not independent of the lot size.
What's the minimum lot size of an elevator? According to this ordinance, what lot size is called out under column 3 that says lot dimensions under the words for elevator apartment?
The bulk requirement for an elevator apartment is 40,000 square feet.
Okay, and what is the bulk requirement called out, and what is the square footage called out for a garden apartment use under column 5 on this chart?
For lot area, it's 20,000 square feet.
Okay. And your position is that the elevator apartments calling out 40,000 square feet is not relevant in your application to the degree of the height variance. Is that correct?
My position is that the applicant requires a lot area variance and a height variance that are independent of each other.
If it were not to get the lot area variance, hypothetically, if it were not to get the lot area variance.
Louder, please.
I'm sorry. Hypothetically, if it were not to receive the lot area variance, what is the permitted height for this property?
If the lot area is not granted, the application stops there.
Oh, is it then not a fact then that the rest of the application, if it stops there, if the lot area is not granted, isn't it not a logical necessity that the rest of the application hinges on the granting of the lot area variance? Yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
And I'll qualify that.
No.
It is not a sequential analysis. It is not a sequential analysis. It is a comprehensive analysis. We look at each one of the parts. We don't look at lot area first, then look at height, then look at setbacks. We look at it all in one swath. One is not independent of the other. That's the way it works.
I get it. And if I ask you the same series of questions as to the relationship between the variances as they pertain to permitted density, you would give me the same answer you just responded.
Right, it's not a sequential analysis.
If you would, I want to ask you a couple of questions about the properties that are immediately next to the subject property. I'm showing you a lot survey, a drawing titled Boundary and Topographic Map. You see that for lots 9 and 10 in block 2? You see
Yes,
that?
these did not include the dado piece, but that's okay.
Okay. And are you able, looking at that, and you've seen this before, right?
I have.
Okay. Are you able to identify the dado property?
Yes.
Okay, and what is the dado property? What, it's lot 11, isn't it?
It's lot 11, block 2, which is immediately south of lot 10, which is the repair facility, the auto repair facility.
And looking at this property, it's on the bottom side of the property depiction, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you know what lot 8 is shown on this survey? A little bit to the west of 67th Street, next to lot 9. You see lot 8?
I do.
Do you know what use that is? You know what use?
Lot 8 is on lot 8 there's a 2-story dwelling that is oriented towards 67th Street.
Okay. And how about is lot 6 adjacent to your subject property?
Yes, it is.
And what is the use, and is lot 5 adjacent to your subject property?
It is. They're similar size parcels. They have, I'll qualify them as small lot residential. I don't know if they're 1-family or 2-family, but they're small lot residential.
There's a residence on lot 6?
Yes.
And there's a separate residence on lot 5?
Right. They are approximately 15 feet off the rear property line, approximately.
Okay, you're sure that there are separate houses on each of those 2 lots?
Oh, I don't know. I believe as I walked the street and looked through, there seemed to be alleys in between each one of the 2.
Well, I'm just asking a simple question.
I don't believe they're attached.
So your testimony is that lot 6 has a residential building structure on it?
Yes.
Correct? And your testimony is that lot 5 has a separate residential structure on it?
Yes.
Okay. And how about lot 4, as depicted on that boundary and topographic map, also is adjacent now to what I'll call the back or westerly side of the dado property, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know if that has a structure on it, or what its use is made of?
There's a pretty uniform pattern up at the top of the street, and that does have a structure, similar to what I'm seeing on the other lots, 5 and 6.
And do you know what lot is immediately south of lot 4 behind the dado property?
Another similarly developed piece of property.
Is it a residential use?
I believe it is, yes.
Well, I don't want you to guess.
No, I believe there was a string of residentials, small lot residential at the top of the hill, as I recall.
Okay, so and the use, and the residential structure that lies on a lot called out just to the south of lot 4 is a structure separate from a residential structure on lot 4, correct?
Yes.
Now, do you have any idea, if you know, when those several residential structures on lots 8, 6, 5, 4, and the lot to the south of lot 4 behind lot 11, do you have any idea when those structures were built?
I will say I did go through aerials as part of my analysis back to the 30s or so, but I don't remember when they were constructed. I don't remember.
Would knowing when they were constructed be of any relevance to you in your planning analysis that you presented to this board?
It's always a consideration as how a neighborhood grew up, yes.
Okay, so I'll take that to be a roundabout way of saying, yes, knowing when those houses were constructed is relevant to your planning analysis that you presented to the board.
That was a direct answer to your question, sir.
Okay, okay. Now, let's talk about the property just to the south, to the south of the Dado property. Okay, you're familiar with the
Property to the
to the
south?
south of the Dado property?
Yes.
I'm sorry, as you look at, do it this way, as you look at your subject property from Boulevard East, let's look at the property immediately to the left of the Dado property.
Yes,
Familiar with that property?
I am.
That property is a building of about 6 or 7 stories high, you know?
I've labeled it as a 5-story building in my area photograph.
Okay, 5-story building. Okay. Do you know when that building was built?
Standing here now, I don't.
General knowledge of the town of West New York, and walking the property several times, and walking around the area a few times, according to what you testified to a few minutes ago, would it be fair that that building was erected prior to 1978? This is, again, the property to the left of the Dado property as you face the Dado property from Boulevard East.
It's fair to say that was erected before 1978, yes.
Fair to say, okay. Now, let's look at the property that we call the Halifax. Do you know which property I'm referring to?
I do. That is the property immediately to the north of the subject property on 67th Street.
Okay. Do you know how far in from Boulevard East down 67th Street the Halifax building is situated?
When you say
I'm
in
sorry,
from
let me
Boulevard East, depth?
No, let me phrase my question more simply. Do you know the depth of the linear length of the Halifax property, if you measure it from from the corner of Kennedy Boulevard, going in a westerly direction away from Kennedy Boulevard down 67th Street?
The easiest way for me to explain how far back that building goes is that it extends back to be coincident with our rear lot line on the subject property.
Okay, no, that's a good answer. So a property that would lie more west on 67th Street of the Halifax would lie beyond the rear property line of your proposal,
Yes.
correct? And would lie approximately across 67th Street from that lot 8 we talked about before.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you know when the Halifax property was built?
I don't.
Okay, from your several walks around the neighborhood, walks around the property and walks around the streets immediately next to the property, would it be fair to say that the Halifax property was erected before 1978?
Again, by its architecture, I would say yes.
Good. Now let's ask about the Versailles. Also, fair to say that the Versailles, you know which building I'm talking about, the Versailles.
Yes.
Fair to say that the Versailles was, do you know when the Versailles was erected?
I actually did have the date of that. I believe it was, I don't, I have Riviera, but I don't have Versailles.
Okay, is it fair to say that the Versailles was erected before 1978?
Yes.
To go back to a question I asked before, and I don't know if I did it correctly, is your testimony also that the variance for density that you're seeking is related to, as you answered the same series of questions, to the lot size? The same series of questions I asked you before. If they asked you about density, you'd give me the same answers you gave to me before about, excuse me, about height, and then subsequently about floor area relation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the language in 70D, my Bible. Hang on one second. Hang on a second. I got it. No, that's getting beat up tonight. Keep this out. Yeah. let's take a look, and you may have it separately, I happen to highlight it, it's easier on my eyes. The language in that's known as the negative criteria on the 78, right? See that?
The two prongs, the granting without substantial detriment to the public good, and will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and ordinance.
Okay.
Again, the
Now-
operative word is substantial.
Yep, okay, now, what? Tell me, in doing that analysis, do you have to unpack or unearth the intent and purpose of the zone plan and the zone ordinance, right?
That's the second prong, correct?
Let me get all right, this first part, we're not talking about that. Now, what steps did you undertake to determine the intent of the zone plan?
Well, we went back and looked at.
When we say we, you mean you or someone else?
Yeah, the firm, my firm. We looked at, and I'd have to find my dates on the master plan, but we went back to. We looked at versions of the master plan going back to 1978. I believe that was the last master plan version. Then there was a re-examination in the 80s, and there was just one last year as well.
What was the date of the last re-examination plan that you referred to last year, if you know? Not precisely. Are you, when you test, are you telling me it was in calendar year 2013?
Yes, it was. And I got this offline. It says July 2013. It says draft on it, on the online version, but I did call and was told by the author, Joe Layton, that it is actually the adopted version.
Now, you know how these things get adopted, right? They get adopted by a planning board, correct?
Correct.
So it would reason that there would be a planning board resolution sometime soon after the date of that document that articulates the board adopting that document as it says, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you locate a copy of that resolution?
No.
Did you look for it?
No.
And was the master plan, which specific versions of the master plan did you look at? You said you looked at versions of the master plan and re-examination in the 80s and the re-examination in 2013.
I believe the housing element 1988, land use plan 1986, re-examination reports 1982, 88, and 94.
I'm sorry, re-examination reports of 88?
82, 88, and 94.
Are you of the opinion that there hasn't been a full master plan adopted since when? Not a re-examination, full master plan.
For several decades now, which would be the 1970s. I don't have the exact date in front of me.
Is there anything else that you looked at to determine the intent of the zoning plan?
I looked at the Hudson County master plan as well.
What date was that?
2002 is what I have here in my notes. Hudson County 2002.
Okay. Is there anything else that you looked at to determine the intent of the zoning plan?
State development and redevelopment plan as well, the cornerstone of really all planning here in Jersey.
What's the date of that?
It was the more recent, well, actually both. I'll call it the thicker version and the more recently adopted version, which is about 2 years old.
Okay. Anything else?
No, those are typical documents that are reviewed as part of a planning analysis with respect to that second prong of the negative criteria.
And what steps did you undertake to determine the intent of the zoning ordinance?
We looked at the zoning ordinance as well, and
When you say the zoning ordinance, you mean the one?
that chapter 414.
Okay. The ones that are online, or
Yes.
sections of which I have examined about tonight?
I did.
Okay, anything else?
No, again, that's typical planning analysis.
And as far as your involvement in this team on behalf of the developer, I'm sorry, this team on behalf of the professional team on behalf of the developer, did you come to the project after the footprint and size, height, and physical dimensions of the building had been established?
I reviewed the finished plans, yes.
Okay, so I take it that you were not involved in the development of the proposed building that is the subject of the application in front of you?
Correct.
Let me ask you a series of hypotheticals. You were here before on the data property, on the application without the data.
Yes.
It's fair that the difference physically between that application and this application, and I say that, I mean the application without the data property, and this application with the data property. It's fair, is it not, that this application represents a building wider in distance when that width is measured along Kennedy Boulevard. Is that correct?
Yes, I think I qualified it as a needle tower, something with a floor plate of about 100 feet by 100 feet or 100 by 130. It's a typical mass of a needle type tower, as opposed to a block, which is what Versailles would be.
Okay. And the width of the Dado property, which is...
Oh, I tricked you.
No, no, that's okay. You're going nicely. Almost. The width of the Dado property added about 50 or so feet to the width of the property. You're able to make a determination using a scale?
I'll accept that, yes.
No, using Dado, it's only 50 feet or 100?
The Dado property added a width of 50 feet to the subject property.
That width is 50 feet?
That's
I'm sorry, the width. Oh, 50 feet, okay. So the Dado property added about 50 feet. Now, hypothetically, upon the developer's acquisition of the Dado property, which you just said is about 50 foot in width, hypothetically, could not some of that property could not more of the Dado property in width have been used to provide a greater setback from the property immediately to the south of the Dado property if the developer chose to?
It's
hypothetical,
and the answer is yes.
Okay, and hypothetically, had the developer chosen to develop a property, a new building, using a Dado lot, but not extending all the way out as far as it has proposed, but a little less than that, hypothetically, would have a less wide development as measured along Boulevard East, provided a greater amount of separation from the proposed property and what we'll call the building to the south of this property. Hypothetically.
That's a factual question, and the answer is of course.
Okay. Hypothetically, let's go on, and maybe you'll turn it factual. Would the development of the property as proposed, of a less wide linear distance, have provided more light. If the property were not, if the proposed project were not developed as wide as it is proposed to be developed along Broadway East.
Again, it's a factual question. A smaller structure would produce, would allow for more light, air, and open space.
I'm sorry, more, so you answered my next question, was it such a structure, a more narrow structure, would provide for more air?
Yes.
And more light? And more,
Correct.
Yes, and more
But I'm
open.
not
and more
implying
open.
by answering your factual questions in that regard, that I'm saying that's a better zoning.
No, I'm just asking you as a matter of fact, hypothetically, had the developer proposed a more narrow building, what the consequence would be, and you answered to me the consequence would have been, there would have been more light. Consequence would have been, there would have been more air. Consequence would have been, there would have been more open space.
Yes.
Correct? Oh, yeah. Also, hypothetically, had the developer done that, and I'm asking all these hypotheticals with maintaining the northerly, the boundary or the footprint at the 67th Street side. So I'm only varying the southerly side of the building for now. But hypothetically, would that hypothetical more narrow building have allowed the developer to, if not fully comply with a side, I guess it's a side yard variance, come closer to compliance than it proposes to comply now?
Again, if it's a factual question, yes, a smaller mass would be more in compliance with the ordinance, but I'm still looking at this from the statutory requirement.
Not
offering
my,
that as-
again, not my question at all. Your attorney having ample time to redirect it. I'm just asking a series of questions, yes or no. Now, the series of questions I just asked you were all with the northerly border fixed for the footprint.
Yes.
Assuming, hypothetically, the developer has acquired the Dado property, is under contract, has beneficial use of it. Would the Dado property, the use of the Dado property, have allowed the developer, if it chose to shift the footprint of the building a little bit to the south and narrowed it by some amount less than what it's proposing, allowed it to provide a greater setback from 67th Street, hypothetically?
Yes.
Okay, and again, I'll ask the same series of questions. Had it chosen to produce a narrower building with, using the Dado property, but narrower, and moving it, would have allowed it to move the footprint away from the 67th Street and provide more air and open space at 67th Street?
Yes.
And would have allowed it to provide more light along 67th Street?
Yes.
Okay. And if it chose to use the Dado property and bring both sides in a certain amount, it would have been able to provide open space on both sides of this proposed property. When I say both sides, I mean the 67th Street side and the side closest to the property south of the Dado property, the building south of the Dado property, correct?
Geometrically,
Yes.
a box could go on this property that could comply with everything. I'm saying this is a better zoning alternative with the applicant's.
Not my question, but thank you for that, for volunteering that. But hypothetically, with the acquisition of the Dado property, the developer could have developed the property using at least some of the Dado property, but making use of a greater width to provide greater side yards on both sides of the property. Hypothetically.
Yes.
Box. And hypothetically, that box could have been situated to provide greater light on both sides of the property, correct?
It's a box,
And
yes.
hypothetically, it could have been situated to provide greater air on both sides of the property, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, isn't it a fact, and if you can answer it, you can. If you can't, you can't. Isn't it a fact that the more units that are produced in a building such as this, the more financial revenue the developer stands to receive? If you can answer the question.
I'm not sure how that's relevant to my planning analysis at all.
Well, if you can't answer it, you can't answer it.
I can't answer. I have not seen the applicant's pro forma.
Chairman, I think I'm almost done. Give me one moment to double check on something, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, subject to calling Mr. McDonough on recross after rebuttal on redirect, I have no further questions, Mr. McDonough.
Thank you. Well, I'd ask both attorneys to step forward, please.
Good.
Here. That's yours. That's only two of them.
Is this on the record, because I'm not able to hear them?
No, this doesn't have to be there. This is housekeeping, the sense of scheduling.
You don't want me to put them on?
All right, ready?
Yeah, but I can't. I'm not gonna be able to hear them if they're standing in front of me talking.
Well, we'll try our best, how's that? All right, do you want to step down there then?
Let me just get my pad.
This is what I understand we have left. The next, I guess, would be the applicant's rebuttal. Is that correct?
No, I need to,
Where does your rebuttal come in?
after objectors, witnesses. So we have next is, I need to redirect Mr. McDonough, and then possibly some recross by Mr. Kanowitz. Once we're done with Mr. McDonough, then the public makes their comments.
All right, this is what I have then. I have planners redirect and possible recross, public comments, objectors planner, applicant's cross of the planner, applicant's rebuttal, board questions, summation, and board decision.
Correct. I know Mr. Kanowitz was going to make a decision as to whether or not he's also going to have a traffic engineer. I think last time we had a traffic engineer, so for purpose of scheduling, I don't know if he brings somebody else.
I was thinking of bringing one in, but now that I have till the 22nd to make that decision, I can postpone that and advise everybody in time and fashion by let's say, January 5th. That's satisfactory.
That's fine. No, I'm just trying to help the public out in the sense of some people have asked me to schedule when would public comments be had. It seems to me that if what we have left is redirect by the planner and further cross-examination of the planner, that we'll probably start, if not finish, public comments on January 22nd.
I agree with that.
Correct?
Probably, and we may even get the applicant's plan.
Right, no, I just wanted to make sure the public understands that, okay. That being the case, Mr. Alonso, how's your client decided regarding my request?
At this time, because there are some significant events that need to take place between now and January 22nd meeting.
You're talking about the Board of Commissioners appointments?
Correct.
Okay.
And we don't know how it's going to impact the
Correct.
board. I can at this time consent to waiving the time
Okay.
until January 22nd, and then we'll address it at that point.
Okay, so as of today, the timeliness issue is waived to the January 22nd zoning board meeting.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could I just add a footnote?
Sure.
Inclement weather is capricious in this area to avoid any gymnastic arguments about whether it was or wasn't waived, that proviso be provided that the board meets, because if there's no meeting on the 22nd because of horribly inclement weather, and the board doesn't meet till the 5th, I don't want anybody to claim that there's been a statutory approval.
To what fifth?
Excuse me?
Is it?
In other words, if for any reason the board doesn't meet on January 22nd because there's a foot of snow on the ground, and he's only consented to an extension to the 22nd, arguably he could say on the 23rd there's a statutory approval.
You okay with that, Mr. Alonso?
I'm just saying till the 22nd or the next meeting of the board's convening, if for any reason the board doesn't meet on the 22nd. It's just a overly cautious lawyer's comment.
All right,
Yeah. Again, to be overly cautious, I think he was concerned about the capriciousness of the weather. And then he ended up by saying, for any reason.
No, I'm sorry.
Excuse me, let me handle this, right?
So, to the extent
As
that.
I understand it, from you speaking with your client, that the applicant waives the timeliness issue until the January 22nd meeting, unless the board cannot meet due to inclement weather, by which the applicant will waive the timeliness issue to the regular February meeting.
Correct.
I have a problem, point of information. If for any reason there's not a quorum on the 22nd, then the statutory approval ensues. And that's a problem for me.
Well, how can I force him to waive it?
Well, you're right. We'll deal with it.
Thank you. Well, I think what should happen is everybody should try to make sure that the commissioners on the December meeting do what they have to do regarding the 6 or 7 board members that are in jeopardy. Right? There's nothing else I can do about it. Okay, so at this point in time, as I understand it, the timeliness issue is waived by the applicant until the January 22nd meeting, unless that meeting cannot take place due to inclement weather. Inclement weather may in fact also include, assuming that there's a full board or enough members to have a quorum, that those members cannot get to the meeting. You understand that, Mr. Alonso? But it has to be due to weather.
Correct.
All right, it has to be due to weather. Okay, that being the case, the timeliness issue would then be moved to the regular February board meeting. Right, this hearing is consequently adjourned to the board's regular meeting on January 22nd at 7:30, since we already have one small matter that'll be heard before it. So it'll be January 22nd at 7:30 in these chambers.
What's the February meeting date?
I'll tell you in 1 second.
Right. We can't want that kind of trade right here.
The February regular meeting date is on February 25th.
Thank you.
Welcome.
25th.
25th, Wednesday the 25th. That being the case, I'll now open the meeting to any member of the public who would like to come forward and make a comment regarding the general board behavior. Come forward.
Hi, my name is Linda Kellerman, 6600 Boulevard East. I have like a question. It pertains like to this application, but in general, if a meeting drags on and on and on, and like there's not a quorum or whatever, does that automatically approve the application? Because the statutory approval, I don't know what this is. I mean, it could happen to another application too. I'm just curious, the process.
Maybe I can answer that question regarding the timeliness issue.
Yeah, there's a point in time if the board does not
Can you
act.
speak up, please?
There's a point in time if a board doesn't act on an application and the applicant doesn't consent to have the application continue, then you can get a statutory approval, so something can get approved. That's what we were talking
But
about.
how does that work? What is the procedure for that? Do they have to go to court? And when they would go to court, would the zoning board be represented?
No, they don't. They don't go to court. But it would.
It would be approved, the application would, like, if I wanted to build a skyscraper, 100, let's say I buy the land, I outbid Capadogby, I buy the land and I want to build a 100-story skyscraper. And there's problems with the zoning board, the commissioners don't get their act together, or snowstorms, blah, 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 blah. It drags on, and I have a really good lawyer. It's automatically approved. Is that what you're saying? statutory approval?
If it's not acted on
Within a
by the
cer-
board within a certain amount of time, and you as the applicant don't give consent for an extension.
So I could build my 100-story skyscraper.
Well, you would probably get an appeal, and then it would go to court, and there's,
But in theory, okay, anyway, you know, what this is going, I hope we don't get 1 million hearings on the same application or modifications. I hope there's some decision, hopefully the right one, just from this application at this time. It's late, it's okay.
Okay, have a good evening.
Thank you, you too.
Sleep well.
Well, I don't know if I'm gonna do that, but I'm gonna try. Maybe I'll have a little drink. Thank you. I have a question. May I speak?
What?
May I speak? Thank you. Joan Palermo, 6600 Boulevard East. I have a follow-up question. Is there a statutory definition of timeliness? I mean, how is that determined? Obviously, what's timely for an application with 2 minor variances does not apply to an application with 20 major variances. So how is that determined?
okay, I appreciate all these legal questions. My job is to provide legal advice to the board and not to give legal advice to members of the public. So, there is an attorney here that represents the members that live in Versailles, so
Mr. Cantwell,
feel free to ask.
is there in fact a legal definition of timeliness?
I'll defer to Ms. Goncher after I have to, my somewhat educated opinion, since she's done this before. I believe timeliness is defined as the board having to take action within 120 days of the determination of completeness for a major site plan and or variance application.
Yes, the variance is
20, otherwise it's 95 days. So in short, from the time of completeness, the board has 120 days. If there's a variance involved, to make a decision unless the applicant grants consent to
And
accept.
we are way beyond 120.
Right.
Number one, but number two, as I understand it, is even if the applicant were to exercise that portion, there still would be potential for an appeal in court to overturn the applicant's action.
Yes, because there's always potential to take an appeal from any action that's taken at administrative level.
And it also should be noted that this hearing has been adjourned by consent at the end of each hearing.
Just one question. Patrick Collins, 72 67th Street, West New York, New Jersey. Given the amount of variances requested on this application, how many yes votes would the applicant need for it to pass?
5.
5 yes votes. I'm going to ask for permission to ask one more question. Considering the fact that there may be 5 to 6 members that may be replaced, or their seats may be replaced due to lack of credentials or whatever the necessary requirements are there any relief that justice would have, considering the fact that you're going to be expecting people to read possibly 1,000 pages of transcripts in what, a week's time? And
Why are you saying within a week's time?
well, whatever requirement would be. Was there a monitor? Will Ms. Morello be standing over all the new members of the board to make sure they're reading everything?
Do you have another question?
There's a certification.
Because you're being
people sign.
silly right now. And we're
No, I just think that that's the backdoor way to approve this stuff. I know it's beyond your.
There's a certification that all members would sign,
That they have to
certifying
sign.
that they read the transcripts.
Okay, there's no way to prove that they actually read it. They're just certifying to that effect.
Well, a certification is a statement under oath. A certification is a statement under oath.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other member of the public? Not seeing any. I'll close that portion of the hearing. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'll see you on the 11th. How do you think I should play? In the beginning of the
I'm gonna go.
meeting?
better than.
What you can do.